Restart. Spider-Man. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51. I became weak, but also stronger. Before they had time to think, they faced the biggest threat on the planet and immediately entered combat mode. Ang. The huge beast that resounded through the sky slowly rose into the air, ignoring the laws of physics, and on the ground was an endless stream of Chitauri giant apes. The wild breath spread, and the nanometal device on the back of Infinite Tony opened, blooming like a flower bud. "Captain, I need your help." He tilted his head and said, "No problem, I'm always here." I saw old Steve holding a shield in one hand and Thor's hammer in the other, with terrifying thunder power spreading all over his body. "Thor, Captain." Boom. Thunder exploded in an instant, and as high voltage current was injected into the nanotechnology burst into full power under the blessing of the majestic energy, and lasers continued to bombard the land in front. Boom. The surging flames enveloped the battlefield, and the two seemed to have found a tacit understanding of the past. But soon, as the light of the nanoweapon became flickering, the power of the laser suddenly decreased. "Sir, the armor system is affected by the abnormal magnetic field. The power has dropped to 30%, and the flight system stability has dropped to 15%. Please land immediately." Friday sounded the alarm, and the floating Infinite Tony could only land on the ground. No wonder Thanos didn't bring any high-tech weapons. It turned out to be due to the magnetic field of this planet. He thought to himself. The flight system could not take off due to instability, and the power of other weapons and devices was also weakened, but it was still usable, and could barely cope with the current situation. Otherwise, he could only resort to close combat. Behind him, Lizard Parker and Carter rushed indiscriminately with shields in hand. Lizard Parker finally realized the benefits of having a shield, but still couldn't forget the painful experience of being hit in the face by the shield. At the same time, Carter's ability was also exposed to everyone. Captain Carter injected with super soldier serum. Bang bang bang. The 5-pointed star shield ejected one after another, sparks and lightning all the way back to Carter's hands, leaving a lot of broken limbs and debris of the giant ape along the way. Seeing Carter's shield flying, Lizard Parker was very envious. Because he was clumsy, he could only use the shield as a machete. On the other side, Charlotte fired spider silk flying among the giant skeletons around him, and the giant apes that flew over were split in two under the impact of the shield. Everyone protected Thanos, and Thanos was naturally not a weakling waiting to be protected. He violently swung his sword and rolled up the wind and sand, leaving ugly giant ape heads everywhere he passed, like a bulldozer, rushing forward and invincible. The young Thanos was quite powerful, and he had nearly 100 tons of physical strength before he reached his peak. His defense was even more shocking, and he didn't care about being bitten by the giant ape occasionally, and his skin didn't show any damage. The mission requirement to protect Thanos seemed like a joke. At this time, the Leviathan whale, which was tens of meters long, roared over, and its target was Thanos, who had the blood of the Titan. "Let's deal with that big guy first," Charlotte shouted, and then launched a spider silk that flew into the air. Whoosh. Amidst the howling wind, old Steve took advantage of the situation and swung out Thor's hammer. Go. Bang, bang, bang. Thor's hammer smashed the bodies of giant apes along the way. When it passed by Charlotte, he subconsciously grabbed the handle of the hammer. "Charlotte, why should I catch it?" In an instant, Charlotte, who was clinging to his hands, was dragged by this terrible force and turned into a parabola and flew down. Bang. With a loud bang, Thor's hammer landed with a bang, knocking down a large number of giant apes again. "Why did you catch it?" Old Steve's face turned black. "Didn't you ask me to catch it?" Charlotte said as he threw down the hammer and threw out his shield to repel the attacking giant ape. "Sorry, I don't understand what you mean." A large number of ferocious giant apes came to kill him. Old Steve didn't have time to say more. He held the shield in one hand and then took the cracked Thor's hammer from behind. This is the Thor's hammer in Jane Foster's hand. Boom. Thunder suddenly appeared under the violent swing, and Thor's hammer shattered into a rain of light, instantly clearing the large number of enemies in front. The broken hammer is more useful. Old Steve was very satisfied. Charlotte flew towards the giant whale again. Do it again. Good. Old Steve raised his hand to summon the broken hammer, and when the hammer condensed into shape, he held the spider silk that shot out with one hand. The wind was howling, and old Steve turned over and jumped onto the back of the giant whale under Charlotte's huge force. Immediately, he threw Thor's hammer on the back of the giant whale without hesitation. And in an instant, the giant whale wailed, and Thor's hammer at this moment seemed to have the weight of a planet, and it crushed the giant whale in an instant. Boom, the huge beast smashed to the ground, and mud and gravel splashed, and it crushed countless giant apes. Looking at the giant beast suppressed by Thor's hammer, Charlotte flew to the ground. He clapped his hands. Very good. Even on planet M78, we can defeat the little monsters without Ultraman. What is Ultraman? The kind that can be ooby. To be honest, I don't understand your bad humor. Where's the hammer? With the exclamation of old Steve, the giant whale suddenly lost all its restraints and roared into the air. Charlotte frowned, and he shot spider silk to the back of the giant whale, and sure enough, he didn't find Thor's hammer. I understand. Thor didn't participate in the exile journey and was eliminated, so of course his hammer couldn't be left behind. As he said that, the shield in his hand was also swallowed by the void. Look at the group of people on the ground again. Lizard Parker and Carter's shields are gone. Without shields, they are no match for the ferocious giant ape army. In an instant, the battle situation reversed, and Lizard Parker and Carter were quickly overwhelmed by countless giant apes, leaving only Infinite Tony and Thanos struggling to support. Oops, little spider, use your superpower to think of a solution. Old Steve said with an ugly face. Charlotte, if he really has such a superpower, why would he need to use a cheat? The next moment, the spider sense alerted frantically, and the giant whale under his feet performed a death flip in the air, trying to throw the bug off its back. Shit. Old Steve grabbed the protruding bone spurs on the back of the giant whale tightly. Use your superpower. He shouted at Charlotte. Charlotte thought of something, and he pulled off the spider silk launcher on his wrist without hesitation, and then jumped towards the giant skeleton on the ground. Puff puff puff, the self-produced original spider silk shot out repeatedly, and Charlotte flew back and forth around the giant whale, and soon wrapped it with spider silk. Gradually, the giant whale's flipping movement became slower and slower, and the crystal spider silk all over its body was cold and flowing. It was not like the pure white of ordinary spider silk, but more like the texture of steel wire. One end of the fine spider silk was connected to the giant skeleton, tightly holding the body of the giant beast. The whale was struggling, and the huge force made the giant skeleton shake. But the more it struggled, the more the fine spider silk tightened its body, and even began to cut through its armor and break its flesh. Crackling, the roar of the beast became more and more shrill in the sound similar to metal friction, and black blood fell all over the sky. Charlotte flew and landed on the giant skeleton, and a feeling of weakness came like a tide. The original spider silk mode of the restart reward finally came in handy. The hardness and cutting force were beyond imagination, but it took a lot of energy to synthesize this spider silk. He was weak. He also became stronger. Chapter 52, Spider Silk Recycling Mode. Immediately, Charlotte's figure flew between the giant skeletons, leaving a trace of cold crystal light along the way, and soon all the spider silk protein was completely consumed. The next moment, the army of giant apes rushed into the skeletons one after another. As Charlotte pulled the spider silk in his hand, the crystal spider silk in the giant skeleton tightened in an instant. Puff puff puff, in an instant, the spider silk, that was difficult to detect with the naked eye, easily cut through the monster's flesh and blood, ruthlessly crushing each giant ape in the trap into pieces, without giving the enemy any time to react. Within a few seconds, hundreds of giant apes had been separated from their bodies, and the broken limbs and arms all over the ground were shocking. The dark green blood slowly slid down the spider silk without a trace of dirt. As Charlotte loosened the spider silk in his hand, the giant skeleton returned to a brief calm. Come in, he shouted at Thanos and the others. The people trapped in the monster's encirclement fought and retreated, but the endless army of giant apes rushed forward one after another, and the giant skeleton was soon covered with corpses piled up like a hill. The spider silk trap completely lost its killing power, and the people who were exhausted from dealing with the army of monsters disappeared from Charlotte's sight one after another. The scratched shield was inserted diagonally into the ground. The broken nano armor was trampled by the giant ape. The headless body of the lizard Parker was quickly turned into powder in the fight of the giant ape. Thanos, covered in blood, swung his sword to smash the monster's body. He roared and ran towards the unreachable golden sun step by step. No one could stop him. Only himself. His physical strength was consumed crazily. Although the giant ape head hanging on his shoulder had lost its body, it was still instinctively biting his flesh. His arms, legs, and waist were all tightly entangled by the monster. The purple titan dragged the monster's body forward step by step. He mechanically swung the sword, regardless of whether he could hit the target. The light in his eyes gradually disappeared, leaving only numbness and despair, until the endless monsters overwhelmed him. Thanos' eyes revealed a strange emotion. In order to obtain the strongest titan body, he slaughtered countless people, and his hands were stained with the blood of his own people. He had hesitated, regretted, and struggled. On a dark night, after crying in an unknown corner, he still chose to be the only Thanos who could save Titan. He became more and more cruel, getting closer and closer to his destination. But this road is too long. He is tired. Really tired. He knows that he can't complete this journey. His power has its limits. He will be buried on this desperate planet like countless predecessors who want to save Titan. If he can't become an eternal Titan, he can't save Titan. His hometown is destined to be destroyed. And he is lucky, because he doesn't have to witness that moment with his own eyes. You have been eliminated and cannot get a chance to revive. You will be rewarded with the original Spider Silk mode +1. There are 8 chances to restart. Do you want to restart? Back to the cosmic spider web. Charlotte touched his chin and thought. The endless monsters are a natural barrier, and it seems that it is a forbidden area set up to stop the Titans. But there are ways. After learning what the so-called exile journey is, he had another idea in his mind. It is not difficult for him to cross the monster army and get close to the sunlight. After thinking for a moment, he rubbed the position of his wrist, manually switched the spider silk mode, and then flicked his hand to shoot out new original spider silk. HMM. It seems no different. Charlotte, who was holding the white spider silk, had a thought, and the spider silk shot out suddenly contracted and poured into his wrist, quickly returning to the original spider silk protein. Charlotte. Wow, it also has recycling. Compared with the trap spider silk mode, the spider silk recycling mode obtained this time is not bad. I wonder what kind of spider silk mode I can get next time I restart. This thought flashed through his mind, and Charlotte came back to his senses with a start, and immediately extinguished it. This idea is very dangerous. Then he clicked restart. Restart. The third resurrection match. This time, under Charlotte's leadership, everyone successfully came to the altar on the spire. Blood dripped into the groove, and the starry sky above his head bloomed one after another spider totem. 2 spider totems overlapped, and then there was a broken spider totem. The spider totem has not been reset, Charlotte thought. So this broken spider totem can return to his world with him after winning the resurrection match. What are you doing? Lizard Parker on the side said impatiently. Charlotte noticed the hostility flashing in Lizard Parker's eyes from time to time and was speechless. Good guy, the friendship they just established is so fragile. Nothing. Then let's start destroying this place. Wait a minute. Wait for what? Wait for Thanos. He will come to us. Is it your superpower again? Yes. Not long after, Charlotte saw Thanos again. Hello, my name is Thanos. I'm the leader of Titan. I know. Charlotte said first. You know? Thanos was a little surprised. Old Steve and others also looked strange. Little spider, your ability is too terrible. Let's not talk about this. Make a plan first. What plan? Eagle plan. The next day, the land of exile. Witnessed by countless Titans, Thanos walked to the center of the altar with a pious face, holding the so-called holy vessel of the Titans in his hand. The holy vessel is a bronze vessel similar to a urinal. The way to open the portal is to put your hand on the surface of the vessel, and the mysterious power in it will automatically sense the so-called divine power. Buzz Thanos and Charlotte stretched out their hands at the same time. The runes on the surface of the vessel glowed, and the purple portal slowly opened. Let's go. Without waiting for Thanos to speak, Charlotte took the lead in leading everyone into the portal. Strange, he seems to be more familiar with the process than me. Thanos, who was walking at the end, couldn't help scratching his head and took off a few strands of hair. Oh no, my hair loss is getting worse. He looked a little painful, but he still carefully put away the hair and then followed Charlotte into the portal. As everyone descended on the desolate planet, the giant skeletons on the ground shook violently, and the terrible beasts broke out of the ground. It's the Chitauri's giant whale weapon. Infinite Tony exclaimed. No, it hasn't been transformed into a biological weapon yet. Old Steve glanced at Thanos, and then, according to Charlotte's instructions, he threw Thor's hammer at the giant whale without hesitation. Boom. In an instant, the giant whale was suppressed by Thor's hammer before it was completely lifted into the air, and endless giant apes swept the earth. Old man, it's up to you, Charlotte said. Understood. Old Steve took off the spare Thor's hammer. After seeing Charlotte lock the handle with spider silk, he aimed at the direction of the sunlight and threw Thor's hammer fiercely. Boom. Thunder flashed and Charlotte was dragged into the sky by Thor's hammer, taking Thanos and others who were bound by spider silk with him. Is this the Eagle plan? Old Steve shouted in the air. Charlotte turned around. What did you say? Speak louder. I can't hear you. Whoosh, the strong wind passed by them at a high speed. Charlotte and others were like grasshoppers on a rope at this moment. This is not a metaphor. The next chapter will be released later. Please read it. Chapter 53. Go to the temple and fight Thanos. Strange things passed across the horizon. The giant ape army on the ground looked up at this scene, roaring and rushing towards the sunlight. Almost there, Thor's hammer went straight to the sunlight. At a close distance, Charlotte finally saw what the so-called sun was. On the dark cliff, a golden gem slowly floated on the top of the cliff. Its blooming light was not dazzling, but it just covered this desolate land. Thanos, behind Charlotte, looked at the golden gem in the distance, and his face showed joy. He didn't expect that the gap that countless Titan predecessors could not cross was easily done by this bug. Of course, it was also thanks to the friends who suddenly appeared on Titan. Almost at the same time, Infinite Tony and Old Steve also saw the golden gem and exclaimed, "Mind gem." Infinite Tony's face changed. He would not be wrong. Old Steve frowned. Shouldn't it be on Loki's scepter now? Hearing this, Charlotte suddenly had an ominous premonition. Are you sure that's the Mind Stone? He asked back. Old Steve's face darkened. You can't hear it, can't you? I lied to you. As soon as the words fell, Thor's hammer flying on the top of the cliff was swallowed by the void, and it was obvious that the other contestants had been eliminated. Thor's hammer disappeared, and Charlotte and others fell towards the cliff wall in a parabola under the action of inertia. Fortunately, we should be able to reach it smoothly with some effort. Thanos breathed a sigh of relief, but as the light of the Mind Stone suddenly flashed, something strange happened. In an instant, a golden halo swept over, and everyone immediately lost their self-consciousness. When Charlotte opened his eyes again, he found himself in a golden sea of flowers. Under the blue sky and white clouds, he ran wantonly in the sea of flowers, with a smile that was extremely bright on his face. Summer quietly passed by, leaving a little secret I can't tell you as the familiar music sounded. Charlotte stopped abruptly. He raised his hand to pick the wildflowers by his ear, looking confused. What am I doing? The next moment, the spider sense alerted Charlotte, and he was dazed for a while, and finally saw a familiar figure. In midair, Old Steve and Lizard Parker hugged each other. Oh, Jack. Oh, Ruth. Jack, I'm flying. Ruth, I'm flying too. I'm flying higher, Charlotte. On the other side, Carter raised his middle finger to Infinite Tony, full of rude swear words. Damn bastard, I'm going to beat your shit out and put it back into your body so that you know that Agent Carter is not easy to mess with. Infinite Tony raised his helmet and cheered. Long live Hydra. Charlotte. Chaos, all chaos. But since there is no danger, why would the spider sense be triggered? He soon knew the answer. Boom. The strong wind whistled, and when the double-edged sword swept across, the terrible force directly swept Old Steve and others away. I'm Thanos, the Titan God. For the glory of the Eternals. Thanos, with a ferocious face, roared and grabbed Charlotte's ankle and threw him to the cliff. Bang. The gravel flew, and Charlotte's figure was deeply trapped in the cliff. Crack, the gravel slid down, and Charlotte broke free from the restraints of the stone wall, only to feel unbearable pain in his back. The biggest unstable factor turned out to be this guy. He rubbed his sore shoulders. Facing the threat of Thanos, Charlotte's eyes turned red, and he turned on the venom mode without hesitation. The next second, Thanos' burly body crashed into the cliff not far away, tearing a large piece of stone. For the glory of the Eternals. At this moment, Thanos climbed the rocks like a monkey and killed Charlotte, vowing to tear him into pieces. Yin. The black spider spear assisted Charlotte to run wildly on the steep stone wall, avoiding Thanos' fist bombardment in an instant, while the sharp spider spear stabbed continuously. Ding ding ding, sparks flew everywhere. The black spider spears could not break through the defense, and Thanos took the opportunity to hold a spider spear in his backhand, and the terrifying power completely exploded. For the glory of the Eternals. Thanos roared and swung the spider spear to smash Charlotte against the stone wall again, but the next moment he was trapped by the crystal spider silk trap. Crackling in an instant, the sound of metal friction became more and more piercing, and Thanos' armor broke into pieces. The moment the exposed purple skin touched the crystal spider silk, blocky missiles suddenly emerged. Thanos' movements only paused for a moment, and then a huge force exploded, and the crystal spider silk broke one after another. Oops. Seeing that the situation was not good, Charlotte jumped back without hesitation, and fell towards the cliff in free fall. At the same time, the spider spear in Thanos' hand turned into liquid, and slipped away from his hand. Bang. He didn't have time to retract his fist. As he punched into the stone wall, spider web-like cracks quickly spread, and the stone wall with a radius of hundreds of meters turned into rubble and fell, and Thanos' figure was among them. Swish. Charlotte flew up with the help of spider silk. He looked down at Thanos, who was still crazy at the bottom of the cliff, and frowned. This guy's mental resistance is very low. He couldn't get rid of the hallucination, even after falling off the cliff. It seems that this injury can't make him sober. He is no match for Thanos alone, unless he adds a few other people. But now they are dead or injured, and they have no strength to fight again. This game is a bit suspenseful. Immediately, he turned over and climbed to the top of the cliff, intending to try to use the Mind Stone to make Thanos sober again. But soon, he came to the Mind Stone, stretched out his hand to touch it, but he felt dazed, and the next second he came to the golden sea of flowers again. Summer quietly passed. Go to your sister. With psychological preparation, Charlotte woke up instantly. But he looked around the sea of flowers, and for a while he couldn't find a way to leave the summer, or leave the illusion. After an unknown amount of time, the spider sense alerted, and the sea of flowers in front of Charlotte disappeared, replaced by the hideous face of Thanos. I know. For the glory of the Eternals. Wrong. For the glory of Titan. A fist as big as a sandbag hit him, and Charlotte spread his hands helplessly. Naughty. You have been eliminated, and cannot get a place to revive, and you will be rewarded with the original Spider Silk mode +1, there are 7 chances to restart. Do you want to restart? On the cosmic spider web, Charlotte tried the new Spider Silk mode. Looking at the wavy spider silk shooting out from his wrist, Charlotte was silent. Is this a reminder for him not to waste time? Restart. The 4th resurrection match. Beside the fountain, when the countdown ended, Charlotte said to everyone directly, I've been here, and I know a way to easily participate in the exile journey. He didn't lie. As soon as this was said, everyone looked at Charlotte in surprise. Why should we trust you? Thor came forward with a hammer in his hand, and said with disdain. Charlotte glanced at the furious lizard Parker, and he threw a punch to send him flying. I've won 2 resurrection matches before. He pointed at the lizard Parker, who was lying on the ground and wailing, and the next second he pointed at the elderly Steve in the crowd. They all know about this, and they will definitely win, if they follow me. Carter was thoughtful, and she was the first to be moved. Tell me your plan, she said. It's simple. Go to the temple and fight Thanos. Chapter 54. Agent Carter. With great power comes great responsibility. As soon as this was said, everyone in the group looked puzzled. Fight Thanos? Why fight him? Isn't our mission to protect him? I know. This guy must have died at the hands of Thanos. He regards the Thanos here as his enemy. What a poor guy. He can't tell who killed him. You're wasting my time. I've been listening to him until now. He's crazy. Let's go. He won 2 resurrection matches. This guy must be bragging. In an instant, there was a burst of boos. Everyone was about to leave here in groups of 3 or 2. Suddenly, old Steve squeezed out of the crowd. I believe him. He came to Charlotte and said, "Little spider, I'm glad to see you again. Sorry, I shouldn't be happy." His smile became awkward. It doesn't matter. After restarting one after another, Charlotte didn't want to play humor with the other party. He glanced at the contestants around him, thinking that it was impossible to keep everyone, so he had to use that method. Immediately, he used the experience accumulated from many restarts to persuade Carter, Lizard Parker, and Infinite Tony to participate in this operation. Charlotte stood beside Carter, pretending to be embarrassed. Alas, this operation is too dangerous. Agent Carter is so weak. Who can protect her? It's really a headache. His voice was so loud that everyone present could hear it, especially the other steps. When the old Steve heard this, he understood it instantly, based on his understanding of Charlotte and the other Steves who paused. "I'm Captain America, a brave Avenger. I will protect all Agent Carter. This is my mission." He shouted loudly, and the other Steves' faces moved slightly, and their eyes became more hesitant. Carter was embarrassed by this, but she also understood Charlotte's plan. She thought about it in her heart and still didn't want to have too much communication with those Steves. Unlike the old Steve, those guys gave her a feeling very similar to the Steve she knew, and their aura made her very uncomfortable. But the next moment, Charlotte whispered in her ear, "Agent Carter, the greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. The team needs more combat power. Please." In an instant, Carter trembled. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. She carefully recalled this passage, as if there was a special magic that drove her to change her mind. "Okay, I'll try." Finally, she agreed for some unknown reason, and walked towards the steps. Seeing this, Charlotte couldn't help but smile. This sentence really worked. Then, he turned and walked towards Jane Foster and began to persuade her. "If you want to complete the mission, reliable teammates are indispensable. You can distrust me, but you must trust it." He pointed at the Thor's hammer in the other's hand. "The person it recognizes must not be wrong, right?" Jane Foster looked at Thor not far away thoughtfully. "Are you referring to him? He doesn't seem to want to join you." "No, he means me." Old Steve stepped forward, stretched out his hand and smiled. "Let me try." "What?" Seeing this, whether it was Jane, Thor, or Loki, they all looked surprised. "Are you sure?" Jane's tone was questioning, but she handed the hammer to old Steve without hesitation. She seemed to have a guess. Without waiting for old Steve to make any move, Thor suddenly laughed loudly. "What a joke. How can a mortal be qualified?" Halfway through his words, his ridicule instantly turned into shock. "How is it possible? How is it possible?" Thor and Loki exclaimed at the same time. They stared at the old Steve playing with the hammer in amazement, shaking their heads repeatedly. "I must have seen it wrong. How can a mortal pick up Thor's hammer? I know, the hammer is broken, so he can pick it up." Loki clapped his hands and laughed. "It must be like this." As he said that, he quickly stepped forward and snatched the hammer from the old Steve's hand. Neither Jean nor the old Steve refused. Under the teasing eyes of Infinite Tony, Loki, who had just snatched Thor's hammer, was suddenly pulled to his knees by an infinitely huge force. "Loki, how embarrassing." He looked around, loosened his grip on the hammer, pretended to be indifferent, stood up and patted the corner of his clothes. "Actually, I was just joking just now," he explained. "I know you are very humorous." Old Steve turned around and picked up the hammer and returned it to Jane. "Can you join us?" he invited sincerely. "Of course." Jane agreed straightforwardly. She smiled and said, "If I'm not mistaken, I should know you." "What do you mean?" Old Steve was stunned for a moment, then suddenly realized. "I see. Thor's hammer was stolen from the exhibition hall. I heard that it was stolen by a woman. I saw the news." "That's not stealing." "I know. You are Thor's girlfriend. He loves you very much, so his hammer will love you too. We have separated." "Well, it's a pity. How did you die?" "The story is complicated. After I died, I went to Valhalla. It was too boring there, until I received a strange invitation." The two began to chat enthusiastically. Seeing this, Thor leaned in to listen to Jane's story with curiosity on his face. How about it? Do you want to join us? Charlotte blocked Thor's sight and took the opportunity to invite him. Thor thought about it and said proudly, okay, mortal, I will join you, but don't try to command me, because I'm Thor, the god of thunder, representing the gods of the north. I know, the glory of the gods of the north. You are free to act at will. I will join you too. Loki put on a wicked smile. I think you guys are very interesting. No problem. Since then, the team's combat power has increased dramatically. Let's go to the Temple of Titan Star. Led by Charlotte, the group came to the roadside. Take a taxi. Half an hour later, under the spire, Charlotte waved slightly, and Loki cast magic to quickly copy thousands of clones, and then rushed towards the Titan Guard like a tide. Damn, what are those? So many twins, triplets, no, multiples. Their mothers are so hard. Stop talking nonsense, stop them quickly. Not long after, as the Titan guards were led away by the clones, everyone rushed to the top of the spire at a rapid speed. On the huge stone mill altar, Charlotte dripped blood into the groove. A huge spider totem appeared in the sky above, and Thanos was led to the scene. Hello, I'm Thanos, the leader of Titan. While Thanos was introducing himself, Charlotte quietly came to the corner. He tapped a stone tablet and a virtual password lock immediately appeared. He entered the password skillfully, and the surrounding stone tablets quickly moved and turned into a temple, blocking all the accompanying Titan guards outside the temple. Thanos was left alone to face the Avengers. What? Seeing this, Thanos was shocked. He looked around at the people around him who had become unfriendly, and then his eyes locked on Charlotte in the corner. His face was solemn. How do you know the password to open the temple? Of course you told me. Charlotte smiled with his hands spread. Having witnessed Thanos start his exile twice, he knew everything he should know. The temple needs a password to open, and the portal does not require a specific time to open, as long as there is a holy artifact and the corresponding divine power. The holy artifact is also hidden in the temple. As long as Thanos is subdued, there is no need to worry about this guy losing control under the influence of the Mind Stone. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. Beat up Thanos and take away Meowth hammer. Thinking of this, Charlotte activated the Venom mode without hesitation. The red and blue battlesuit turned black, and 4 spider spears extended from his back. Now, go. Instantly, Charlotte, with red eyes, shot spider silk flying in the temple, and Infinite Tony released absolute firepower to cover Thanos' body. Boom, the war raged, and Thanos rushed out of the encirclement under the violent firepower. Damn, who are you? Kill you. Without the restraint of the electric shock device, Thor's whole body burst into thunder light. Holding Thor's hammer, he was invincible. Every time he swung the hammer, it was like Thor. No, he was Thor. Boom. Thunder exploded, the altar shook violently, and Thanos' body trembled violently in the thunder, but he still retained his peak combat power. Die. He rushed towards Thor with the violent thunder and lightning, and his fist as big as a sandbag broke through the thunder and blasted Thor away. The next second, he was hit on the head by several flying shields. Dang dang dang. Thanos' head collided with the shield and produced sporadic sparks, which surprised the Steps. They had never fought with Thanos and had no idea how terrible their opponent was. Damn it. Thanos turned around and punched, and the young Steve only had time to raise his shield. Bang. Hundreds of tons of force hit the shield, and as the airwave rolled, the terrible force blasted Steve directly 100 meters away and hit the stone wall of the temple. Wow, in an instant, Steve was seriously injured and knelt on the ground. He had lost all his fighting power as he vomited blood. Seeing this, Charlotte, who was always observing the battle situation, was very confused and fell to the ground. He picked up the fallen shield and knocked it, and found that the texture of this thing was slightly different from that of the old Steve's shield. So that's how it is. He understood. Not every shield in Steve's hand is the same. The vibranium element in it is more or less, and the defense power is strong or weak. Because the casting process is similar, it can't be found without careful observation. No wonder this guy was killed by Thanos in a second even with a shield. Bang, bang, bang. The next moment, several more steps were crippled on the spot by Thanos' flaws. Lizard, Parker and Carter were also thrown away one after another, and the number of combatants dropped sharply. Die. With Thanos' roar, the air stagnated instantly. Boom. Thor's hammer was knocked away, and the Thor's hammer in Jane's hand turned into a rain of light that hit the Titan's body, but it still couldn't shake the terrible existence. But just as Thanos was showing his power, the Thor's hammer, that fell to the ground, was summoned, and fell into the hands of the old Steve. Tony. Understood. Immediately, the Infinite Tony back armor activated the nano device, and violent thunder poured into it, and the peak firepower enveloped Thanos' body. Boom boom. The armor's firepower was vented crazily, and Thanos staggered back under the impact of lasers, and finally fell into the spider silk trap that Charlotte had already set up. Crack, crack, crack. Thanos in the trap was still struggling, and the crystal spider silk broke from time to time. Charlotte knew that he could not trap the other party, so he flew onto Thanos' shoulder, and the black spider spear turned into liquid tentacles to lock Thanos' arms. Damn Spider-Man, you succeeded in irritating me. Thanos roared, and before he could burst out a more terrible force, he was hit on the forehead by the roaring nano hammer. Bang. With a muffled sound, Thanos felt a sharp pain in his forehead, and blood gradually seeped out of his forehead. A drop of blood fell from the corner of his eye, and he looked at the Infinite Tony in front of him in disbelief. How is it possible? You can actually hurt me. Don't be surprised, the other you has also experienced it. The corner of the Infinite Tony's mouth slightly raised, and the flames of his elbow burst out, and the huge thrust once again helped the nanohammer. Suddenly, hundreds of tons of explosive force hit Thanos in the face. The violent force wrapped the Titan's body to break through the spider silk trap and hit the stone wall of the temple fiercely. Boom. Crack. The gravel flew, and Thanos' body was deeply trapped in the stone wall. He was hit in the head and shook his head fiercely, barely staying awake. Before he could make any move, the old Steve came with Thor's hammer, and a set of shield and hammer combos put Thanos in an even more embarrassing situation. At the same time, Infinite Tony and Charlotte quickly surrounded him, and Thanos' incompetent roar echoed in the temple. The young Thanos' fighting power was not as good as Thanos in the movie universe, and the three of them could just suppress him. Not far away, Thor looked at this scene, and felt a little unreal. That's my hammer. Why is that guy more familiar with the fighting method than me? Loki, who had been playing soy sauce, crossed his arms and smiled. I guess he must have practiced secretly. Lizard Parker covered his swollen cheek and limped towards Carter. How are you? He asked. Carter looked at the dent in the shield in his hand, shook his head slightly and said, I'm fine. If I had a better shield, I could last a whole day. Anyway, I don't want to face that scary guy again. Lizard Parker shuddered at the thought of the power of that punch. On the side, Jane Foster looked at the battlefield with Thor's hammer in hand. It's time. Taking advantage of the opportunity when Thanos staggered and fell to the ground, she threw the cracked Thor's hammer fiercely. Boom. As the lightning spread, Thor's hammer shattered into a dense meteor shower that enveloped Thanos' body. Then, old Steve and Infinite Tony performed a combo again. Under the continuous bombardment of the armor firepower and Thor's hammer, poor Thanos finally couldn't bear the burden and fainted on the spot. On the messy altar, Charlotte shot a large amount of spider silk to wrap Thanos into a giant cocoon, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. Very good, half of the success. Hey, Kit, what should we do next? Thor asked. Don't worry. Charlotte glanced at the huge altar that had cracks on it and began to worry. He was not sure whether an intact altar was needed to open the portal. He could only try. Soon, he found the holy vessel in the temple. He placed the vessel in the hands of the fainted Thanos, and he also stretched out a hand and placed it in the vessel. Instantly, under the effect of the holy vessel, a red and blue spider totem appeared on Charlotte's chest, and the purple skin on Thanos' body also glowed dimly. But in the expectant eyes of everyone, the purple portal finally opened. Success. Loki showed a happy face. He couldn't wait to rush to the portal, but was pulled by Thor. I'm your brother. I'll go in first. Humph, we are not related by blood. Then at least we are cousins. Loki. Before they finished arguing, Charlotte and others had already disappeared into the portal with Thanos. Damn, they got there first. Thor rushed to the portal, but was blocked by an invisible barrier. Why is this happening? He was stunned. Loki tried and found that he couldn't enter the portal either. His face was grim. Why else? We were fooled. He gritted his teeth and said, "Did you find out? Our hammer was also taken away by them." Jane Foster was speechless. Thor. Asshole, give me back my hammer. Please read more. Chapter 56. Peter and Steve have a date. Ang. The beasts roared in the desolate land, and the black army of giant apes surged like a tide. The next moment, lightning raged in the sky, and Thor's hammer hit the giant whale to suppress it. Go. Boom. The broken Thor's hammer flew towards the high cliff where the mind gem was, taking a series of grasshoppers with it. In the fierce wind, the old Steve shouted at the top of his voice, "Little spider, why don't they come in together? What did you say? The wind is too strong. I can't hear." In just a few seconds, when they were close to the high cliff, Thor's hammer disappeared. The light of the mind gem flickered for a moment, and the group immediately began to dance in a frenzy. Xia and Xia quietly went over and left a little secret. "Oh, Jack. Rose, I'm flying. I'm going to beat your shit out and put it back in your body. Long live Hydra." This time, the fainted Thanos did not show any signs of rioting, so Charlotte's spider sense would naturally not warn immediately. Soon, as everyone turned into parabolas and smashed into the cliffs one after another, with the warning of spider sense, Charlotte, who was the first to wake up, switched to spider silk mode without hesitation. Puff puff puff. The moment they jumped off the cliff, spider silk flew out and locked onto the falling people. Then Charlotte's muscles swelled up, and he reached back and twisted the dense spider silk into a rope in his palm, and then tied it around his waist. Crack, crack, crack. Charlotte climbed the cliff with his hands and feet. The gravel along the way slipped from his side from time to time. His thin body carried the hope of the whole team. The wind roared like a demon, and Charlotte's heart was like Tony and others hanging in the sky. The hanging people, the hanging heart, who knows when they will fall from the sky. Crack. As expected, the cliff rocks could not bear the weight of everyone and trembled slightly. Charlotte suddenly felt empty under his feet. In a flash, Charlotte's eyes turned red as he fell rapidly. The black spider spear instantly pierced into the stone wall, and a series of rolling stones fell down, and he stopped falling. In the next half an hour, with the help of the black spider spear, Charlotte finally led everyone to the top of the cliff. Charlotte breathed a sigh of relief after throwing everyone on the flat ground. If there is no accident, there should be no need to waste the opportunity to restart later. He did not approach the mind gem floating in the air, but waited quietly. 10 minutes later, Infinite Tony was the first to wake up. Looking at Carter, who was cursing at him, Infinite Tony blinked. "Is this all you know?" he asked. The next second, Carter regained consciousness. She looked around with a confused face. "What happened just now? You cursed." "No, I never say swear words." "Okay, then I heard it wrong." Not long after, Lizard Parker and elderly Steve regained consciousness one after another. Everyone gathered around Thanos, who was talking in his sleep with his eyes closed, with strange looks in their eyes. "What is the Eternal Clan? Isn't he a titan? Maybe he is hiding something from us. We should wake him up." "Let me try. Let me do it. I just need to pee." "Do you think you are humorous?" Charlotte said as he squatted down, raised his fist, and was about to use the simplest and crudest way to wake the other party up. Before he could start, Thanos suddenly shuddered and opened his eyes, and the confusion in his eyes quickly turned into anger. "You bastards, why do you want to?" Halfway through his words, he suddenly reacted. "Where is this?" "The land of exile, planet M78. Charlotte said. "What?" Thanos was shocked, turned his head, and saw the Mind Stone floating in the air, and laughed in surprise. "Ha ha ha, it's it, the light of the mind recorded by the Titans. It is indeed in the land of exile. Titan is finally saved. My efforts have not been in vain." "Ahem, Thanos, are you awake? I'm the one who tried to get you here," Charlotte reminded. After hearing this, Thanos finally reacted. He looked at Charlotte with a puzzled look and a hint of vigilance. "Why did you do this?" "Because I want to help you. But you knocked me out. This is part of the plan. Otherwise we would not have come here at all." "What is your real purpose?" to let you survive in the land of exile. I don't believe there is such a good thing. Whatever you want," Charlotte said as he untied the spider silk that bound Thanos, and then took a few steps back. Thanos stood up. He raised his hand to wipe the dried blood on his forehead and looked at the group of people with doubts and speculations. But soon, his doubts about Charlotte and others were overwhelmed by the light of the Mind Stone. With excitement, Thanos turned and walked towards the Mind Stone. Wait. The moment Charlotte opened his mouth, Thanos suddenly felt as if he was facing a great enemy. "What do you want to do?" He stepped back cautiously. Charlotte spread his hands and said, "I just want to remind you, don't touch it, otherwise you will fall into hallucination again." Hallucination? Thanos frowned. "Yes, if it weren't for this, we wouldn't have to knock you out in advance to prevent you from going crazy." Charlotte's words not only stunned Thanos, but also Infinite Tony and others looked unbelievable. "Little spider, your ability is getting more and more terrifying. Can you predict this in advance?" Old Steve couldn't help but give a thumbs up. Lizard Parker was a little scared. "I didn't lose unfairly the first 2 times. If I hadn't acted with you this time, I might have failed again. No, I should hate you." He reacted and pretended to be fierce. "Fake. I won't. Okay, I forgive you." After saying this, Lizard Parker began to doubt himself. Damn, what did this guy do to me? He was extremely crazy in his heart, but it was difficult for him to continue to hate Charlotte. Could it be that He suddenly had a terrible guess. No. Lizard Parker suddenly held his head and wailed, which immediately puzzled everyone. "What's wrong with him?" Carter asked. Old Steve shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe he is still immersed in the illusion just now." "Immersed in the memory of dating you?" Infinite Tony teased. Old Steve's face was full of question marks. "With whom?" "With you. You just hugged each other." Live broadcast title drama. "What?" Old Steve's face was stiff, and then he turned around silently. "No." He suddenly knelt on the ground, holding his head and wailing. Carter shook his head and sighed. "Another man trapped in the swamp of love." Infinite Tony nodded. "Yes, I never knew he had such a quirk." "Stark, you shouldn't discriminate against them," Carter said seriously. "Sorry, it's my fault." Tony's tone was very perfunctory. On the other side, Thanos had already come to the Mind Stone. Under Charlotte's advice, he did not touch the Mind Stone rashly, but closed his eyes and carefully recalled the records of the Mind Light among the Titans. After a long time, he opened his eyes and sighed slightly. "If I'm not mistaken, you need a holy weapon. Here you go." Charlotte immediately threw the holy weapon to the other party. He saw the other party bring this thing in here last time. "Thanos, you seem to know everything. Of course, you still have time to worship me now." "I'll think about it." In Thanos' eyes, what Charlotte wore on her face at this moment was not a spider mask, but a mysterious veil. Thanks to Black and White 2 sides, Line K for the reward of reading coins, and thanks to Miss Mino and Hazen Zion for the reward of points. Chapter 57 The Birth of the Bold Thanos. Thanos did not hesitate any longer. He held the holy vessel high and slowly placed the floating mind gem into the vessel. Buzz instantly, golden light sank into the vessel, and the mysterious runes on the surface of the holy vessel began to radiate golden light, becoming more and more dazzling. In the surprised eyes of Charlotte and others, the vessel burst out with a gorgeous purple starlight, instantly covering Thanos' body. The next moment, Thanos' face became ferocious. "Ah. No, what is this?" He held his head and wailed, only to feel the blood in his body begin to boil, and the intense pain all over his body instantly overwhelmed his body. The scenes that emerged in his mind made him extremely desperate in addition to being shocked. Seeing Thanos suddenly fall to the ground and struggle, Charlotte and others retreated dozens of meters away without hesitation. What happened to him? Has he hallucinated again? No, it's a little different from before. Charlotte observed carefully and saw that Thanos was struggling. His purple skin gradually became darker, his bones made a strange sound, and his purple gold armor was burst by his steel-like muscles, and his body became taller and more burly. His iconic big chin also began to appear, and then his thick black hair fell off rapidly. He will be in pain when he wakes up, because he has become bald. Lizard Parker touched his bald head and sighed. He has become bald and stronger. Charlotte nodded. His spider sense told him that Thanos was becoming more and more dangerous at this moment. What exactly happened? Carter was puzzled. Charlotte guessed he may be evolving. Evolving? Yes. Charlotte explained. Thanos killed countless tribesmen in order to become the Eternal Titan so that he could start the exile journey to save Titan, but he never succeeded. But now it seems that he needs the power of the Infinity Stones and the assistance of the holy artifacts to transform into the Eternal Titan. Infinite Tony quickly understood the meaning of this sentence. The exile journey has begun. I know it's because of you, but without you, Thanos couldn't start the exile journey alone, and he couldn't become the Eternal Titan. Old Steve continued, if you can't become the Eternal Titan, you can never start the exile journey. This is very contradictory. What is the meaning of the exile journey? I guess there are more than one Infinity Stone, right? Carter instantly thought of the key. Infinite Tony nodded. There are 6 Infinity Stones, and no one knows their power better than me. As he said that, his right hand trembled subconsciously, and a trace of fear appeared in his eyes. But why did the Mind Stone appear here? Charlotte narrowed his eyes slightly, and had a guess in his heart. Soon, as Thanos' transformation was coming to an end, the light of the holy artifact dimmed. Who on the top of the cliff? A tall purple figure knelt and gasped. The holy artifact rolled to the ground, and the light of the mind gem flickered. Looking at the golden gem in front of him, the sweaty Thanos had endless despair in his eyes. Although because of the improvement of his life level, the power of the Eternal Titan filled his body. He felt stronger than ever. Before, he would be defeated by Spider-Man and those guys. But now, he can easily crush those guys. But he didn't have the joy of transforming into the Eternal Titan. Because when the Mind Gem activated the blood of the Eternal Titan, he saw the most unspeakable secret of the Titans. Secrets that only the Eternal Titans can know. The Celestials. The guys lurking in the core of the Titan star are the newborns of this terrifying race. It is invincible. As long as the number of lives living on Titan reaches a certain level, the biological energy it emits can completely hatch it successfully. The Celestials were born with a huge body like a planet, and no planet could support their existence. Even if he became an Eternal Titan, he could not defeat the terrible Celestials. Because the birth of the Eternal Titans originated from the Celestials. They created the Eternal Titans for the purpose of letting them protect the life on the planet and make it reproduce quickly to hatch the celestial seeds. The Eternal Titans are both guardians and executioners. Thanos did not expect that the seemingly fair slaughter he made to start his exile journey was the only way to prevent the destruction of Titan. Yes, the only way. Only by slaughtering half of the population can the birth of the Celestials be barely prevented. Therefore, there is no way to save Titan in the land of exile. Instead, it reminds the Eternal Titans who come here not to forget their mission. Protect the life of Titan and then face destruction. For countless years, because of the continuous degeneration of the Titans, no one knows this secret. Thanos became an Eternal Titan. He knew the truth and was completely desperate. He slowly stood up and took the Mind Stone away with the holy artifact. At the end of the cliff top is another stone mill altar. He will return to the planet he loves. That is his hometown. It is also the next Shura field. His hands will be stained with blood. He has made up his mind. The new god is about to be born, and it is too late to transfer the population of Titan. In order to keep half of the people on Titan alive, he will become a real devil, the most brutal thug in the universe, and the overlord who destroys everything. From this moment on, he completely loses the qualification to be a leader. What awaits him will be the endless hatred and nightmare brought by the slaughter of life. He has no choice. Thanos staggered, and he walked towards the altar step by step, as if he had exhausted all his strength. He did not roar at the top of his lungs, did not struggle, and did not cry helplessly like himself on a certain night. Looking at Thanos' lonely back, Infinite Tony inexplicably felt a sense of sadness. Did he successfully find a way to save Titan? He said. Old Steve's face was calm. Maybe he found it, but he doesn't want to accept it. Lizard Parker was thoughtful. I guess he just can't accept himself becoming a bald head. This is the price of becoming stronger. Charlotte paused. It's also the price of saving Titan. If he saves Titan, he will become everyone's hero. Carter laughed. Charlotte shook his head. If he can choose, He won't want to be a hero. He said affirmatively. Until Thanos completely disappeared from the altar, no accidents happened during the period. This resurrection match only consumed 3 restart opportunities, which made him feel unreal. Am I so good already? But think about it carefully, this resurrection match is not difficult. Then, the system prompt appeared in front of everyone. Old Steve took a look at the reward this time, and immediately covered his face and wailed. Oh no, this reward is not what I want. Lizard Parker cried with joy. My lizard ability has become an active skill, and I can live a normal life again. Congratulations, Peter, and of course congratulations to myself. Infinite Tony smiled, and his slightly frowned brows relaxed at this moment. He can finally return to his own world. Pepper, Morgan, Peter. He can't wait. Carter couldn't hide his joy, and then looked at them in confusion. We got different rewards? Obviously different. Old Steve was depressed. Little spider, when will you die? He looked at Charlotte with a hint of expectation. Charlotte. Sorry, I have something important to do next, and it will be difficult for me to play the resurrection match with you. He lowered his eyes and looked at the 5-pointed star shield in the old Steve's hand, his eyes faintly cold. Captain Hydra, I'm back. Thank you Unit 0 Wildfire for the 2000 points. Deg point deg, Degreezo. At 12 o'clock tonight. Fuck Captain Hydra. Chapter 58 Thank you, Spider-Man. Shield. No news about Spider-Man yet. Harry came to Nick Fury's office and asked as soon as he entered the door. Nick Fury, who was checking the information, saw Harry and shook his head. No, he seemed to have disappeared out of thin air, and our people couldn't find any trace. Harry frowned. It's been 3 days. If he's fine, he should have returned. Yes, he will continue to haunt at night, but no clues about him have been found in these 3 days. Nick Fury rubbed his eyebrows. How is Stark? He changed the subject. Harry nodded. Fortunately, he is not injured. Our people are always watching him to make sure he won't be kidnapped again. That's not the point. Nick Fury stood up and walked to the French window, and a trace of worry flashed across his one eye. Hydra has not been completely destroyed, and the strange spine has not been found. This is what I'm most worried about. Is Hydra really that scary? Harry was puzzled. S.H.I.E.L.D. is the world's top spy organization. They shouldn't need to worry about the lingering Hydra, right? Nick Fury explained to Harry's doubts. You don't understand. The Hydra of that era was the nightmare of the whole world. Their reappearance must have a bigger conspiracy. And Stark is part of their plan. Maybe even your father may be involved in this incident. What? Harry was shocked. He subconsciously clenched his fists and took a deep breath, trying to calm himself down. He is no longer the simple boy. He needs to change. Impulsiveness and anger are fatal flaws. So Spider-Man is also one of their targets. Since that time, he has never come back. Maybe they have. Harry, you should worry about them. Nick Fury interrupted Harry's next words. He looked at the neon night outside the window, and his tone was inexplicable. Spider-Man will not die. It will be troublesome to provoke that guy. Harry suddenly sighed. Spider-Man will not die, but Charlotte is different. He disappeared again. I have to hide it from Uncle Ben. Is he traveling again? Nick Fury asked. How would you know? Well, tell me before you investigate the people around me. Harry turned around and was about to leave. Don't think about Charlotte. She's my only friend. He warned. Nick Fury said calmly. You said the same thing to Spider-Man. For new friends, you always have to say something nice to increase the relationship. Who taught you that? Charlotte. Charlotte. Nick Fury thought about it and asked the question in his heart. Have you ever thought about it? No, he is who he is. If he doesn't say it, I won't ask. This is the most basic respect between friends. Friend. Nick Fury seemed to have thought of something, and he couldn't help but smile slightly. I have such a friend, but she is too busy. Harry was not interested in listening to Nick Fury's story. He walked out of the office. The elevator door opened. Harry looked at Steve in front of him and was a little surprised. We have met. He walked into the elevator and pressed the first floor. Steve smiled and said, yes, I'm sorry about that time. It's okay, it's over. The elevator slowly descended, and the two were silent for a while. Harry glanced at the shield in the other's hand. Do you have a mission? He was the first to break the silence. Steve nodded. Yes, a troublesome guy. Do you need my help? No, I can handle it. Beep. The next second, the elevator door opened. Steve waved. I'm leaving first. Goodbye. Harry walked out of the elevator. Looking at Steve's hurried back, he couldn't help frowning. I always feel that this guy is a little bit wrong today. He shook his head, put aside this strange thought, and then took out his mobile phone to call Pepper. I'm Harry Osborn. When can I sign the contract? Not long after, in a secret underground base. Click. As the rusty metal door slowly rose, Steve walked into the dim corridor. At the end of the corridor was a huge laboratory. There were many sophisticated instruments and equipment arranged inside the laboratory, the most conspicuous of which was a huge glass container filled with light blue nutrient solution. Gurglesome bubbles rose from the bottom of the container from time to time. The brain of the creature inside swayed slightly, and the instrument connected to the brain began to sound an alarm. What's going on? Steve came to the bald man and asked. The bald man didn't care about Steve's arrival. He kept observing the data displayed on the computer, and his face became more and more shocked. Spider-Man's brain has begun to become active, and it is very similar to the data you provided last time. If nothing goes wrong, we will soon be able to witness the moment of his resurrection. His voice trembled, and his face flushed with excitement. Mr. Lister, please calm down. Steve frowned, and he looked at the increasingly active brain, feeling both expectant and nervous. As if noticing the uneasiness on Steve's face, Lister smiled and said, don't worry, we have divided his body into dozens of parts, and placed them in different experimental bases. Even if he is resurrected, he will not be able to move. Steve took a deep breath. I understand. If his cells continue to be active, is it possible to obtain his regeneration factor? Lister looked confident and said, of course, this is my professional field. As long as we obtain these regeneration factors, our soldiers will become the most terrifying existence in the world, and the plan to rule the world can start ahead of time. Very good. Thinking of a certain moment in the future, Steve's eyes also showed a trace of uncontrollable ambition. Spider-Man, thank you very much for showing up and helping me achieve my goal in advance. At this moment, he could no longer restrain himself, and the evil smile on his face was wantonly. Under the light, his shadow seemed to extend hideous tentacles, spreading endlessly to the laboratory. From the most ordinary soldier to today's step-by-step, no one knows what he has paid. The best friend, the most beloved woman, they gave their freedom and life for this great cause. This is his choice, and he never regrets it. Steve looked at the brain in the glass container, and his smile turned into disdain. Superhero? What a joke. The world is a place where the strong prey on the weak. There is no difference between pitying the weak and committing suicide. Those who have great power, but are still bound by ordinary secular morals, are destined to be losers. You choose to be Spider-Man, and I choose to have the power to be at the top of the world. Victory or defeat has been determined from the beginning. He didn't know why he said this to a brain, but he knew he was right. He never thought of himself as a villain in a movie. But then, the facts will tell him who is the protagonist of this world. Steve, something bad happened. Suddenly, Lister received the message and stood up abruptly from the computer. The Spider-Man biological samples stored in other experimental bases escaped. He exclaimed. What? Steve's face was full of horror. Escape? Are you sure you are not kidding? Thanks to Tandem for the reward of 500 points. Chapter 59 Titan Body Spider-Man Physique. Hydra Base Number 3. On the wet ground, two Hydra members were holding a cart with their hands. The alloy iron box on the cart shook from time to time, but the two did not care at all. Have you heard that Spider-Man is dead, killed by Lord Bucky? Don't talk nonsense. It was the leader who killed Spider-Man himself. Really? Have you seen the leader? No, he is very mysterious. It is said that he is an important figure in SHIELD. Long live Hydra. Spider-Man should have died long ago. He killed many super soldiers. By the way, what are we transporting? Spider-Man's hand. What? How come I don't know? Of course you don't know. You went to pee just now. Okay, but I heard that Spider-Man is immortal. Is it really okay for his hand to be here? His body was cut into dozens of pieces. What do you think? I think it's dangerous. What? I think it's dangerous. The man's face was stiff. He pointed at the trembling alloy iron box, and the fear in his eyes spread rapidly. Ike, look, isn't it dangerous? I think you're right. Cold sweat gradually seeped out of the foreheads of the two men, and their legs began to weaken. The next moment, the alloy iron box shook violently. Bang, 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 bang. Amidst the continuous loud noises, dense fist marks suddenly appeared on the surface of the iron box, and the two men collapsed to the ground in fear. Ah! Exclamation mark. Come quickly. Mom, what did I see? Amidst the heart-wrenching screams, the alloy iron box was suddenly punched with a hole by a fist, and the broken arm minute passed over the side faces of the two men like a rocket, rolling up a wave of air, and crashing straight through the wall. Bang, bang, bang. Amidst a series of loud noises, the broken arm broke through the ceiling, and flew from the corner of the city to the night sky. At the same time, riots occurred in the hydro-experimental bases such as the Siberian Plateau, Bard Castle in Italy, the Afghan desert, and the suburbs of London, and even a strange scene appeared inside SHIELD. Oh my god, what is that? Something strange came out from the ground. A leg, a flying thigh. Oh my god, is this the legendary Scud? Stop it. No, we can't. Go inform the commander. On the neon street, a red sports car stopped on the side of the road. While waiting for the traffic light, Harry checked the contract he had prepared again. With the capital injection from Stark Industries, Osborn Group will definitely be able to revive. His father will be proud of him. Beep at this time, the phone rang, and Harry glanced at the caller ID. I'm Harry Osborn. What happened? Harry, there is a mission, and something strange has appeared here. Strange thing. Yes, it is. Before the other party finished speaking, passers-by suddenly screamed, and the strange thing passed by the roof at a high speed, and the airwaves lifted the skirts of the girls, leaving a beautiful landscape wherever they passed. I saw it. It's really strange. It's an arm. Harry frowned, but what I saw was a big foot. What? On the other end of the phone, Nick Fury hung up the call, and noticed something was wrong. Natasha, where did that thing fly out from? There's an experimental base under the building. What? How come I don't know? Nick Fury's face was grim. Where's Steve? Get him back. We can't contact him. Fuck, where did this guy go at the critical moment? New York, District 13. Hydro Experimental Base Number 1. Boom. With the continuous sound of collisions, Spider-Man's limbs and arms flew from all over the world. Arms, torsos, internal organs, thighs, middle fingers. They rushed into the chaotic base frantically, smashing walls and breaking through all obstacles along the way, and finally smashing the glass container to assemble into a human body. Clatter in the nutrient solution scattered on the ground. Red and blue nanometals covered this thin body, and a strange atmosphere spread. Because he has no head, a brain floated above the neck, which was very strange. Damn it, how could it be so fast? Steve could no longer care about anything else at this moment. He hurried to the corner and pulled down the gate. The indestructible alloy cage suddenly enveloped the headless body. Lister looked at this scene excitedly and laughed wildly. Ha ha ha, God, what did I see? A miracle, this is a miracle. Shut up. Steve roared, then grabbed the other's collar and roared, where is the rest of his head? It has been sliced. Before Lister finished speaking, the fragmented head parts passed Steve at a high speed from the door, ignoring the restraints of the alloy cage, and directly passed through the cage to wrap the brain. I'll form the head. Charlotte's voice suddenly appeared in the laboratory. How is it possible? Steve was shocked by the scene. Spider-Man's body was stored in different parts of the world, and it was impossible for it to be gathered here at the same time in such a short time. This is comparable to the speed of light. He imagined that Spider-Man's resurrection would be shocking, but he didn't expect that it could break through the laws of physics to such an exaggerated degree. No wonder Natasha and Banner couldn't clearly describe the process of Spider-Man's resurrection. Although he had taken so many protective measures, he still couldn't stop Spider-Man's resurrection. So, no matter what method is used, Spider-Man's resurrection is inevitable? Such a thought suddenly popped up in Steve's mind. How could such an outrageous thing happen? Exclamation mark. Then, something even more outrageous happened. In the alloy cage, Charlotte slowly opened his eyes. He glanced coldly at the shocked Steve, and then his eyes fell on the reward panel in front of him. Congratulations on winning this resurrection game, and reward resurrection quota X1, used, reward, Titan body, primary, congratulations on activating the spider totem, and getting an extra reward. Extra reward 1, spider totem power X1, extra reward 2, mental resistance plus 50%, number of remaining restarts. 6. Accumulated until the next resurrection game. Immediately, the resurrected body changed drastically again. Dots of purple light particles emerged from the void and quickly sank into Charlotte's body through the nano armor. Crack, crack, crack. The bones made strange noises one after another, and the tremendous power poured into the thin body. The density of bones and muscles in the whole body was rising sharply, and the skin began to change subtly. Between the eyebrows, a trace of cool red and blue energy sank into it, but disappeared in the perception in an instant. At this moment, Charlotte only felt that his body had undergone a qualitative change from the inside out. Although it was only a primary Titan body, the effect of the attribute improvement was very limited. But combined with the Spider-Man physique he already had, these changes were enough to transform his life level. Damn, his body. Steve found something wrong, and turned on the high voltage current device of the alloy cage without hesitation. Zizzy. In an instant, the blue light was strong, and the flowing current was like countless long snakes crawling up Charlotte's body. In this high voltage current comparable to the wrath of thunder, the overwhelmed nanometal quickly fell off, and the devastating blow filled the alloy cage, vowing to destroy everything. Damn Spider-Man, go to hell, I won't give you a chance to revive again. Seeing Charlotte trembling but still silent, Steve laughed grimly. This was both a declaration of sovereignty and a cover-up of his inner uneasiness. But then, the spider totem on Charlotte's chest glowed with light, and the exposed skin on the surface of the body quickly climbed up a light purple color. The muscles all over the body swelled several times in an instant, and the body size rose accordingly. As the magic defense soared, the purple Titan body completely merged with Spider-Man's physique. Haha, the strength is too low. Charlotte's body stopped shaking as the lightning swept through. In Steve's incredulous eyes, the sandbag-sized fist easily broke through the alloy cage, and the purple beast began to crush everything. No. Chapter 60 Captain Super Justice. Suburban New York. Boom. On a remote road at night, dozens of cars lined up in a long line and drove into the forest, breaking the silence of the night. In the leading off-road vehicle, Nick Fury looked at the red dot on the computer. The destination of those strange things is here, are you sure? Natasha nodded. Of course, those things are not only in S.H.I.E.L.D., but also in all parts of the world, but satellite monitoring can only continuously capture a few targets that appear in New York. Their speed does not seem to be very fast. How could they not capture other targets? Nick Fury was puzzled. Natasha tapped the computer and replied, although their speed is not fast, they will disappear from satellite monitoring from time to time, disappearing out of thin air, and appearing on the other side of the earth the next second, which is too strange. And just now, we found many similar targets nearby, so we judged their movement trajectory, and determined that this is their destination. Carlson explained. Looking at the blurred picture locked by the satellite monitoring, Nick Fury frowned. The missing limbs, what is the principle of their movement? Are they flying at a speed comparable to the speed of light? No, if that's the case, the satellite would not be able to capture their traces from the beginning. Hey, Commander, I think it might be space travel. A green light passed over the roof of the car, and Harry, who had changed into combat uniform, stepped on the flying skateboard to patrol the surroundings. He tapped the communicator beside his ear. Except for this explanation, I think it's hard to come to any other conclusion. Nick Fury thought for a while. This possibility cannot be ruled out. They appeared here almost at the same time, and it is obvious that they have made precise calculations. Found it. At this time, Harry exclaimed, and the car stopped immediately. Then, a large number of agents rushed into the forest and surrounded the cave Harry found. The last place they appeared was here. On the ground in front of everyone, dense holes slowly filled with thick white smoke, which soon enveloped the nearby woods. Harry landed on the ground, and his nose moved slightly. It's the smell of burning. It's gunpowder. Natasha said it in one word. Nick Fury frowned. Natasha is right. There may be an arsenal underground. Go look around to see if there are other entrances. He waved his hand, and the agents immediately dispersed. Wait. Suddenly, Harry seemed to notice something. He crawled on the ground and listened attentively, his face gradually becoming solemn. There is a sound below, getting louder and louder, it seems to be. The next moment, his face changed drastically. Scatter quickly. With a cry of surprise, Harry stood up without hesitation and rode the flying skateboard into the night sky. Seeing this, Nick Fury and others immediately reacted and turned around and ran. Boom. In an instant, the dense hole spewed flames, and then a terrifying explosion destroyed the surrounding forest. The raging flames soared into the sky, large tracts of trees were engulfed by the flames, and the clouds in the night sky gradually became stained with a strange blood color. It was so dangerous just now. What happened down there? Nick Fury turned over suddenly under the mud. He gasped for breath and his forehead was covered with sweat. He was obviously scared. Then he stood up and shook off the mud and gravel on his body, looking up at the strange night sky. This level of explosion should not affect the clouds. He frowned. Natasha climbed up the slope. It's not red, it's more like the color of blood. Coulson, who was covered in dust, found the two people. Commander, we found it. We found the mark of Hydra in the debris of the explosion. It's Hydra. Nick Fury gritted his teeth. Harry, you and Barton go down and take a look. Harry interrupted him before he finished speaking. Sorry, it's too dangerous down there. I'm afraid of death. Nick Fury. Before he could find a way to persuade Harry, there was another movement in the center of the explosion. Bang. With a dull metal knocking sound, a violent airwave suddenly rose in the center of the explosion. Boom. The violent heat wave swept through the devastated forest with dirt and gravel, and the thick smoke dispersed in an instant, and the flames were temporarily suppressed. At this moment, whether it was Nick Fury and others, or Harry who was in the sky, they all cried out in surprise when they found the familiar figure at the center of the explosion. Steve. Captain. How could it be him? On the charred land, Steve was half kneeling on the ground in a mess. He held up the shield with both hands, and his face full of black and gray was full of effort. In front of him, the purple burly figure was upright and full of absolute oppression. Whether it was the iron-like muscles or the black meridians under the purple skin, it made people feel almost suffocated. The next second, as the purple fist slowly moved away from the shield, Steve could breathe a sigh of relief. But before he could catch his breath, the purple fist suddenly attacked again with a sharp wind. What? Steve only had time to raise his shield, and then a purple hand grabbed the edge of the shield and threw him and the shield towards the charred tree trunk. Crack, crack, bang. Steve broke several trees in a row before he could barely stop. Steve, how are you? Nick Fury and others rushed to Steve. Under the broken wood, Steve raised his hand to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, and he stood up and took a deep breath. I'm fine. Be careful. This guy is scary. Why are you here? Nick Fury asked. Steve's face remained unchanged. Someone led me here. What is this place? Coulson asked, and then quickly summoned nearby agents. Steve's eyes were solemn. It's Hydra's secret base. Nick Fury looked at the purple burly figure with an ugly face. So this guy's Hydra's secret weapon? In the Titan form, Charlotte's face had already changed, and no one could connect him with the Earthlings. Steve shook his aching right hand. Yes, he is the leader of Hydra. What? Leader? Nick Fury and others were shocked, and Charlotte's cheeks twitched slightly. As expected of the Hydra captain who is good at disguise, there is no flaw at all when he lies. In addition, his handsome face always exudes a convincing sense of security. Too righteous. But Charlotte is different. Now he looks like an evil alien, and he looks like a villain, no matter how you look at him. But then, with the deeper fusion of the Titan body in Spider-Man's physique, the purple body began to shrink back to the size of a normal human, and the purple skin was also fading rapidly. Discovering this situation, Charlotte raised his hand and clicked on his chest, and the red and blue nanometal quickly covered his whole body, making it impossible for people to see his face. What? It's Spider-Man. In an instant, everyone was shocked, and Steve thought to himself that it was not good. His lie seemed to be broken. Too sleepy. The next chapter will be released at noon. Chapter 61, Captain's Super Temptation. It's Spider-Man. He's a member of Hydra. Steve exclaimed, and then threw his shield towards Charlotte. Bang! The shield shot out, and Charlotte raised his hand to hold the edge of the shield. The sharp metal cut the nanometal in his palm, but it couldn't hurt his skin at all. He let go, and the shield fell to the ground. His inverted triangle eyes glowed with blue light in the gradually burning fire. In the tense atmosphere deliberately created by Steve, Coulson and others didn't have time to think too much, and they surrounded Charlotte. Spider-Man, put down your weapon. Charlotte spread her hands. In fact, I don't have any weapon. Wait, this must be a misunderstanding. Harry flew down on his skateboard. He stopped in front of Charlotte and said to Coulson, Spider-Man is not an enemy. This is a misunderstanding. Don't be impulsive. Coulson looked solemn. He is not an enemy. Is the captain an enemy? It's not impossible. Harry, Spider-Man is a Hydra man. Don't be fooled by him. Coulson didn't want to listen to Harry's explanation at all. He was a loyal fan of the captain and absolutely believed in Steve. Nick Fury stepped forward and said, Harry, come here quickly. That guy is dangerous. No, he is my friend. Harry, who didn't listen to the advice, pointed to Steve behind the crowd. He has no evidence to prove that Spider-Man is Hydra. Yes, I have no evidence, but I did see the truth. Behind the crowd, Steve sneered in his heart, but his face was a painful expression. He looked at Charlotte. Spider-Man, we once fought the Green Goblin together. At that time, I thought you were on the same side as us, but you just didn't want to be bound by freedom. But I didn't expect you to be the leader of Hydra. You inherited the remaining power of the Red Skull and tried to subvert the world. This is not allowed. I don't agree. His tone was sonorous, and the sense of justice emanating from his body quickly infected everyone. Yes, the evil Hydra organization should not exist in this world. Harry, get out of the way. Coulson and others became more and more excited, and Nick Fury and Natasha also quietly took out their weapons and pointed them at Charlotte. Seeing this, Harry subconsciously rubbed his temples. Strange, why do I feel that he is right? Charlotte's voice instantly sobered Harry up. No, I won't believe him. Harry shook his head quickly. I know. The red and blue light between Charlotte's eyebrows flashed, and he smiled at Steve in the crowd. I understand. Understand what? Steve frowned. Your ability. Charlotte stretched out her hand and pushed Harry aside. I have to say that your ability to bewitch people is very effective, but you overlooked one thing. What? Steve had a bad feeling. Charlotte clenched her fist, and the nanometal in her palm made a strange sound of being overwhelmed. I'm not surprised that they chose to believe you. Who cares about these? In the face of absolute strength, I want to kill you. Can they withstand this punch of 50 tons of force? What? Hearing this, the agents were shocked. 50 tons of force. How is it possible? As if to prove her words, Charlotte suddenly pushed Harry away and raised her foot to pick up the shield at her feet. In an instant, the spider silk from her wrist connected to the shield and flew around. The air instantly burst into a harsh sound. The agents felt a sharp pain in their chests, and then they screamed and rolled back and fell to the charred ground. Phil. Natasha. Fuck you. Nick Fury cursed, and the next second the weapon in his hand was swept away by the spider silk, and then he lost consciousness under a huge force. A helicopter roared in the night sky, and the sound of breaking through the air came from the sky and hit Charlotte's back head. Swish. Under the warning of spider sense, Charlotte grabbed the arrow with her backhand and wrapped the arrowhead with her palm. Puff. After a muffled sound, sporadic flames bloomed at the fingertips. A wisp of black smoke dispersed in the air, and then a pile of debris slid through Charlotte's fingertips. What? On the helicopter, Barton, who was holding a strongbow, changed his face and took down 3 arrows without hesitation. Swish, swish, swish. 3 sharp arrows broke through the air and attacked Charlotte's head, chest and legs respectively, at a speed as fast as lightning. However, this did not cause any trouble to Charlotte at all. With more and more spider totems, the spider sense has long returned to normal. In addition, Spider-Man, who had merged with Titan's body, was much more agile and nimble than before, and his defense and strength were enhanced. Even if the arrows exploded around him, he would not be hurt. But he could not passively take a beating. Dang. The shield shot diagonally into the sky, and the 3 arrows exploded immediately when they collided with it. Bang! The fire illuminated the night sky, and the red and blue figures had already burst out in the spider silk slingshot. Damn it. Steve, who was about to escape, only felt the wind behind him. His rich combat experience made him subconsciously swoop down to the ground, and the figure passing over his head smashed the tree trunk in front of him. Bang! As the wood chips fell all over the sky, Steve turned around without hesitation and swooped down to catch the falling shield, and at the same time turned over and jumped towards the charred hole on the ground. After the resurrection, Spider-Man's attributes in all aspects, such as strength and defense, have skyrocketed, which he did not expect. Spider-Man is indeed very powerful, but his trump card is also not weak. For him, there is more than one way to kill Spider-Man. After a moment of thinking, Steve felt a shield in his hand, being pulled by a huge force. He saw the cave entrance was right in front of him, but he couldn't move forward at all. Looking down, he saw that the shield was locked by spider silk. With a huge force coming, the shield in Steve's hand suddenly slipped out of his hand. "Captain, your shield." Charlotte took the shield and smiled. Steve's face was gloomy, and he rushed into the cave with a cold snort. "Give it to you." "Thank you for the gift, Captain." Charlotte hung the shield on his back and jumped into the cave entrance right after him. High in the sky, Barton's sight was blocked by Harry's figure. "Wait, I think we should get things clear first," Harry said anxiously. Barton said coldly, "The fact is obvious, Spider-Man is the enemy." Harry held the pumpkin bomb tightly in his palm. He took a deep breath and said, "Are you really not going to find out?" Barton raised his eyebrows. "You want to betray SHIELD? Have you thought it through?" "It's not a betrayal, I just want to help my friend." Harry looked determined. Barton was not moved at all. He drew his bow and aimed at Harry's heart. "You have no chance to shoot in front of me." Harry's mouth corners slightly raised. "Yes, your archery is very accurate, but your IQ is a little bit." Halfway through the words, the pumpkin bomb fixed on the bottom of the helicopter flashed for a moment, and the raging flames immediately submerged the helicopter. Oh shit. At the same time, a messy underground base. Steve fled frantically, and Charlotte chased after him. Because the Titan body was too heavy, Steve could take Charlotte around in the complex underground base. But now, Spider-Man's mobility is fully utilized, and the complex terrain has become Steve's disadvantage. Swish, 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 the spider silk shot out one after another, and the red and blue figure quickly passed the steel building and landed in front of Steve. Before Charlotte could take action, the surrounding metal iron doors rumbled and shook, and a large number of modified people swarmed out of them. "Spider-Man, guess why I led you to the ground just now?" Steve stopped and smiled. Charlotte crossed his arms. "Then guess what I have in my hand?" After saying that, he pulled the crystal spider silk in his hand violently. "What?" "Thanks to Oyubu2KO for the 1500 points. Thanks to Abkba for the 100 points. Thanks to the mischievous Wheel of Fortune for the 2000 points. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62, Captain flying a plane. Puff, puff, puff. In an instant, the sound of sharp blades cutting through flesh and blood rang out one after another. The swarming modified humans were dismembered one after another in the spider silk trap, and large amounts of blood stained the ground red. The bloody scene made Steve tremble. How is it possible? Looking at the metal arm rolling at his feet, he couldn't hide his fear and screamed out. The next moment, he saw a 5-pointed star shield breaking through the air and attacking. The piercing roar in the air made his heart beat faster. No. In a flash, Steve rolled over like an extremely embarrassed lazy donkey to avoid the neighing shield, but as a bloody ear fell to the ground, he couldn't help but scream. "Oh no, damn bugs." While Steve was cursing, he didn't have time to pick up the bloody right ear on the ground. He ran behind him, but saw a familiar shadow shooting at him at a high speed from the corner of his eye. That was his shield. Puff. The shield flashed, blood flew again, and the blood-stained shield cut through the pipe and shot back into Charlotte's hands. A large amount of white gas erupted from the broken pipe, and Steve's body also froze in place. His eyes widened, and he slowly lowered his head, only to see the bloodline across his abdomen spurting onto the wall, followed by unbearable pain. Ah. No, my body. At this moment, Steve's body was cut off from the waist by the shield. He fell in a pool of blood, looking at the lower half of his body in front of him, his eyes full of fear and despair. The severe pain made him scream wildly, just like those cyborgs who were dismembered, but not yet dead. The shrill screams accompanied by abuse gradually became more and more unclear. The body quickly lost temperature, Steve's twitching and trembling gradually stopped, and his consciousness fell into endless darkness with the cold environment. At the last moment of death, Steve, with a pale face, looked at Charlotte fiercely. "Charlotte Parker, do you think you won?" Steve's smile became weird, and then his eyes glared, and he was silent. In the extremely bloody scene, Charlotte looked at half of Steve's body, and there was no pleasure of revenge in his heart. He thought it would be a fierce fight, but he didn't expect it to be a one-sided crushing. This made him realize that something was wrong. This guy was completely different from the last time he attacked him. So, Charlotte, who was extremely sensitive to vibrations, sensed the ground under his feet, turned around and flew deeper into the base. Puff puff puff, spider silk shot out one after another, and Charlotte's figure quickly shuttled through the complex steel castle. He encountered a modified person holding a gun along the way, and he didn't waste any time dealing with it. Da-da-da, gunfire flooded the underground base, and Charlotte ignored the dense bullets and rushed into the crowd. Bang bang bang. The insects with the power of beasts rushed all the way and crushed the dense crowd. As long as it was a place guarded by a modified person, that was his destination. Boom, as the wall was violently smashed, the rubble splashed all over the flat runway. Buzz, the strong wind whistled, and the transport plane rolled up a violent wave of air and passed by Charlotte at a high speed. In an instant, a pair of eyes in the cockpit showed a playful look. The two people's eyes crossed for a moment. "What is that?" Charlotte's eyes flickered. "The kid from Queens. I will give you a big surprise next time we meet." The real Steve withdrew his gaze indifferently and then pulled the joystick, and the transport plane roared out of the runway. In the night sky, the waves rolled under the cliff, and the transport plane flew out of the mountain and disappeared into the blood-red clouds in the sky. Beep in the cockpit, Steve turned on the autopilot mode and then clicked on the virtual computer, and another picture of himself being killed appeared in front of him. After resurrection, he became stronger and is a good opponent. Because of the noise caused by Charlotte's resurrection, the spies planted by S.H.I.E.L.D. around the world should have discovered the secret base of Hydra. This is a trouble for him, but as long as he is still there, Hydra will continue to exist. Because he had enough time. Having lost his identity as Captain America, he began to think about how to proceed with the subsequent plan. Crack. Suddenly, the unusual sound of the fuselage made him frown. Beep, warning. Warning, the fuselage is damaged. Please repair it immediately. The alarm sounded, and the cockpit immediately flashed a rapid red light. Steve seemed to have thought of something, and he turned around and left the cockpit without hesitation, running towards the cargo storage room. Bang. The next moment, the metal above his head vibrated, the sharp shield broke through the fuselage, and the cold wind poured into the cabin. The red and blue figure turned over and jumped in front of Steve. "Hey, Captain, I brought your shield. You have to thank me." Well. In the raging wind, Charlotte's feet seemed to be glued and fixed in place, not affected at all. Opposite him, Steve slightly squatted, his center of gravity sank, and his body was covered with a strange blood color, which was also not affected by the wind. Looking at Charlotte, who was chasing him, Steve's eyes were full of admiration. "Kid from Queens, are you interested in joining Hydra?" "Sorry, I don't like organizations named after snakes. I don't like snakes, unless you are willing to change your name." "Well, how about Hydra? It will be more upscale." "I'll think about it." Steve tapped the wrist device, and the fuselage immediately shook. The transport plane turned around and flew towards the city. "Before this plane crashes on Blake Street in Queens, I'll give you a chance to choose." His tone was calm, as if this crazy behavior had nothing to do with him. Charlotte pondered for a moment and quietly switched to spider silk mode. "The last villain who threatened me with his family is dead." Puff. The sky was covered with spider silk, and Steve's eyes glowed red. He suddenly opened his mouth and roared, "SHHH." In the extremely sharp hissing sound, the visible blood-colored shockwaves bloomed in circles. The spider silk was passively decomposed wherever it passed. The metal in the cabin made an abnormal sound under the heavy load, and a large number of equipment burst into sparks. Under the warning of spider sense, the moment Charlotte raised the shield, the whole person staggered back in the blood-colored shockwave, and the protective effect of the shield was weakened to the extreme. At the same time, his mind was slightly shaken, and he regained consciousness in an instant. It was just a moment of distraction, and Steve had already rushed to Charlotte. "Thank you for the shield." The blood-covered palm just landed on the edge of the shield, and Charlotte's body automatically counterattacked. While holding the opponent's wrist with his right hand, he chopped the opponent's face with his left hand holding the shield. In response, Steve's face did not change, and he reacted in an instant. He turned his head to avoid the shield attack, allowing the shield to fall on his shoulder, and at the same time, he shook his wrist and locked Charlotte's palm, then shook his shoulder to remove the shield, and in the blink of an eye, he swept behind Charlotte and turned over to hug and throw him. Bang! The two figures smashed the ground into a dent, and the fuselage shook violently. Thank you Chunayang Taoist for the 100 points reward. Thank you book friend 201802211448512227 for the 100 points reward. Thanks to ZUIE Taoshine for the 100 points. Thanks to the cat in the sky for the 600 points. Thanks to Wuxan Yuan for the 2000 points. Chapter 63. So the plane crashed. Dang, the shield rolled down, and Steve used his hands and feet to lock Charlotte's body. His excellent fighting skills were fully demonstrated at this moment. "Spider-Man, you lose," Steve said coldly. Being locked up, Charlotte found that the opponent's strength was no weaker than his own during the struggle. He was not surprised but laughed, as expected of the captain. This kind of battle is interesting. After speaking, Charlotte stopped struggling. Anyway, this level of blockade could not cause any substantial harm to him. He slowly stretched out two fingers and shook them in front of Steve. "What do you want to do?" Steve frowned. Charlotte grinned. "Of course I will insert it." "Ah." The next moment, Steve covered his eyes and cried out in pain. Charlotte took the opportunity to break free from the restraints and then imitated the opponent's movements and locked him up with his hands and feet. "Captain, you lose." "Damn bug." The furious Steve's body was flushed with a stronger blood color. Under the surge of power, the strong blood color quickly condensed into octopus-like tentacles, and the dangerous aura spread rapidly. At this moment, Charlotte suddenly remembered what Carter said. Steve, who has obtained the power of Hydra. Gaga tentacles climbed up Charlotte's body, bounding her and then bursting with great force. Gaga. Under the violent squeezing, the nanometal made a strange sound of being overwhelmed. The tentacles hung Charlotte in the air, and Steve slowly stood up with a gloomy face. "It's over. You're so fast." Charlotte's eyes also turned blood red, and the nanometal turned into ink like black when it turned over, and the liquid spider spear condensed into shape and stabbed Steve's eyes. Puff. Ah. Steve's eyes were hit hard again, and the blood-colored octopus tentacles loosened. In an instant, Charlotte flipped back, and the black spider spear stabbed repeatedly, and Steve's body was stabbed into a sieve in an instant. Puff puff puff, blood flowers flew and splashed into the cabin, and Steve's broken body staggered for a moment, and the rich blood color did not decrease but increased. Crack, with a sound similar to the friction of bones. Steve's uniform quickly melted in the blood, and the exposed muscles suddenly swelled up, and a trace of black veins spread from his back to his whole body. On his back, the black spine was slowly assimilated by the blood, and octopus tentacles spread from the spine, and the evil breath completely erupted. Bang bang bang. In the cabin, 9 tentacles whipped wantonly, and Charlotte's figure flexibly shuttled among them, perfectly avoiding all attacks. But the metal of the cabin became uneven under this force. The next second, the hole in the fuselage suddenly expanded, and the more fierce high-altitude wind swept Charlotte's figure away. Crack. Crack, crack. With the help of the blood-colored tentacles, Steve violently broke through the hole and came out of the fuselage. The strong wind outside did not affect his actions at all. With the blessing of the power of Hydra, his wounds healed quickly and his vision recovered. "Come out, I know you won't leave." He glanced around. The blood-colored cloud seemed to move continuously with the transport plane. Gradually, the transport plane began to dive towards the neon city below. The cold wind whistled, and the black spider spear suddenly stabbed out from the side of the wing. Boom. In an instant, the blood-colored tentacles whistled past, and the black spider spears turned into liquid and wrapped around the tentacles. Come here. Steve's back shook, and the blood-colored tentacles burst out with great force to drag Charlotte, who was hiding under the wing. Boom. Immediately, a fist containing tens of tons of power came along, and Steve raised his hand without hesitation and punched out. Boom. In the collision of primitive power, the blood-colored tentacles and the black spider spears continued to clash. With the blessing of the black spine, Steve's power rose again. Although his speed and defense attributes were average, he had a strong self-healing ability, coupled with excellent fighting skills and sonic harassment, making him the most difficult captain Charlotte had ever seen. But even such a difficult captain couldn't take Charlotte down in a short time. Under the amplification of the venom mode, Charlotte already had 70 tons of power, and the spider sense allowed him to perfectly avoid Steve's violent attacks. If it weren't for the strange power of Hydra, he wouldn't have dragged on until now. For a moment, neither of them could do anything to the other. Instead, the transport plane became a mess in the fierce battle between the two. From time to time, large pieces of metal were blown off by the strong wind, and the shaking intensified. Puff. Suddenly, the spider silk exploded, but was blown away by the strong wind in the sky. Steve took the opportunity to lock Charlotte's wrist and crush the spider silk launcher with his fingers. You can die now. With Steve's roar, Charlotte's figure was thrown into the sky. Swish. In the turbulent air, the original spider silk shot out, and Charlotte quickly climbed onto the wing. The venom mode continued to increase, and the black spider spear was on the fuselage as if it was flat ground, and it killed Steve again. At the same time, on the city streets, countless citizens looked at the plane falling diagonally and exclaimed, "Oh my god, the plane crashed. My god, don't fall here, look, there are people on it. How is it possible?" Amid the exclamations of countless people, the transport plane flew over the high-rise buildings, rolling up a violent hurricane. Shit, damn it, I almost forgot. In the fierce battle, Steve suddenly came to his senses. He left Charlotte without hesitation and quickly returned to the cockpit to control the transport plane. He didn't expect that dealing with a bug would waste so much time. Miscalculated. Charlotte stuck his head into the cabin and looked at Steve's anxious back. He complained in his heart. Good guy, wasn't he quite good at pretending just now? Boom. Noticing that the transport plane began to rise slowly, Charlotte calculated the flight trajectory of the transport plane. As the transport plane deviated from the predetermined trajectory, Charlotte raised his hand and shot Spider Silk to grab the shield in the corner into his hand. Friends who have been captains know that the captain cannot fly a plane. Captain, please sit down, we are going to crash. What? Steve had an ominous premonition in his heart. He hurried to the outside of the fuselage and saw Charlotte holding a shield and approaching the propeller under the wing. No, stop it. Steve's face changed drastically. He controlled the blood-colored tentacles to pounce on Charlotte, but it was too late. Bang. As the shield was thrown into the propeller, flames immediately burst out, thick smoke spread in the air, and the fuselage tilted rapidly after the huge shock, falling diagonally towards the distant coast. No. On the tilted fuselage, Steve roared angrily and rushed towards Charlotte. Damn bug, I'm going to tear you apart. Very familiar lines. Good luck. Charlotte waved goodbye, then leaned back and jumped off the wing. At high altitude, the spider silk glider under his armpit extended out, and his figure swept towards the city's high-rise buildings. Seeing this, Steve suppressed his anger and turned to the storage room of the cabin. The parachute had been swept away by the strong wind, and there was no other way. In the cold environment, the power system had been destroyed, and the refrigeration system in the storage room stopped working. Steve came to the transparent crystal ice coffin and looked at the figure inside affectionately. Carter, wearing a red floral dress, lay quietly in it, without any signs of corruption in 70 years. At the dance that night, he killed her with his own hands and completely owned her. She will never leave. This time is no different. Steve leaned his head against the ice coffin, and he and her were only separated by a layer of ice. He closed his eyes and recalled the past, and the blood-red spine on his back spread a deeper blood color, and tentacles circled around and wrapped the two of them together. Boom. The next moment, the transport plane crashed onto the coast, and the raging flames engulfed everything. Chapter 64. But not dead. Over there. Quick. The car stopped, and a large number of reporters rushed to the coast to take pictures of the scene. In the crowd, Betty was pushed and fell. Betty, what are you doing? Get up quickly. The Daily Bugle can't fall behind the Daily Globe. On the roadside, Jonah Jameson shouted anxiously with a cigar in his mouth. Betty looked at Jonah with a dark face. Boss, I just got out of the hospital. How about you come? No, I'm the editor-in-chief. Have you ever seen an editor-in-chief of any company go to the battlefield in person? But you are already here. I'm here to supervise you and cheer you up. Mr. Jameson, if you do this again, I will tell my sister. Wait, don't let them know about our relationship outside. Brother-in-law. No, 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 shut up. Jonah Jameson quickly stopped Betty. I paid for your medical expenses. Think it through. Betty rolled her eyes. I was kidnapped by the Green Goblin because of you. If it wasn't for Spider-Man that time, I would have died. Don't mention that guy to me. Spider-Man. Okay, come back. Jonah covered his forehead with his hands and had a headache. Eddie, you go. He waved his hand. Eddie in the car was stunned. Boss, I'm a new guy. You're strong. Get rid of them. But, I'll pay more. Okay, leave it to me. After getting off the car, Eddie took off his coat and started to stretch his muscles. Boss, I'm going to get on. Go. I'm going. Wait, you forgot to bring your camera. Jonah shouted, and the next moment he saw a black figure passing over his head. Oh shit, it's that guy. No, the Black Spider-Man. The moment he saw Spider-Man, Jonah threw his cigar to the ground, then snatched the camera from Betty's hand and rushed into the crowd with a curse. Get out of the way. I want to see what bad things this guy's doing again. Brother-in-law, you're old. Be careful. Shit, don't let anyone know our relationship on the coast. Jonah barely squeezed to the front of the crowd with the help of Eddie, and his exquisite oily hair had already been scattered. He didn't care about his image. While holding the camera to shoot, he suddenly found something familiar in the wreckage of the plane not far away. That's Captain's shield, he exclaimed. Is this plane crash related to Captain? Looking at the wreckage not far away, a thick blood-colored fog began to spread. The Black Spider-Man slowly approached the fog, and the next moment the wreckage exploded again. Boom. The flames burst, fragments flew all over the sky, and strange creatures emerged from the fog. What is that? Oh, my god, it's an octopus. A big octopus. No, it's a man. A muscular man. He has octopus tentacles growing on his back. Look, he looks like Captain Steve. Someone exclaimed. Suddenly, a group of cameras quickly zoomed in, and they saw Steve's face clearly. Oh my god, it's really Captain Steve. He turned into a monster. Spider-Man's target is him. What happened? Amid the exclamations of the crowd, the sound of sirens came from far away, and police cars drove in one after another. George, the leader, led the police officers to block the area. It's dangerous here. Leave quickly. The police officers began to act, while George looked at Spider-Man and Steve, his face extremely ugly. Did the Black Spider-Man and the mysterious department show up? He asked his police officers. The police officer shook his head. No, we have notified them, but they seem to be delayed by something. What? George gritted his teeth. These guys are really unreliable. It seems that we have to deal with this matter. Evacuate the nearby reporters first. Yes. On the coast, the crowd watched. Charlotte ignored the reporters and police officers and walked directly to Steve. At this moment, Steve's skin was burnt all over his body, but with the help of the blood-colored energy, the burnt skin healed quickly, and the chest pierced by the wreckage stopped bleeding. Steve gritted his teeth and pulled the fragments out of his body, looking at Charlotte with a fierce look in his eyes. You ruined my plan. Charlotte spread his hands. Sorry, you chose to crash the plane, Captain. He tilted his head to look at the crystal coffin behind Steve. It seems to be melting soon. Do you need me to call an ice cream truck for you? Steve looked behind him worriedly. Damn bugs, it's all because of you. Before he finished speaking, Charlotte took advantage of the situation to attack, and 4 black spider spears pierced Steve's body fiercely. Puff puff puff, back to you. Ah. Steve cried out in pain, and the blood-colored tentacles whipped everything around him crazily. Boom boom. There were loud noises on the coast, and the 9 octopus tentacles finally exerted their due power on the ground. Each tentacle contained tens of tons of huge force, like a cruel mobile fortress, that destroyed everything it could see. Boom. Amid the loud noises, the wreckage of the plane flew wantonly, and the surrounding people screamed miserably. Ah. My legs. Scatter. Danger. The crowd retreated again, but the black figure was at ease in the crazy attack of the blood-colored tentacles, as if he could predict it in advance. Every time he turned over and jumped, he could perfectly avoid the attacking tentacles, like a gorgeous dance. The fusion of the Titan's body and Spider-Man's physique, the most exaggerated increase was physical strength. Until now, Charlotte still has no signs of physical exhaustion. This is still under the continuous activation of the Venom mode. Without the interference of the blood-colored cloud, his keen senses have also been brought to the extreme. After obtaining more and more spider totems, the spider sense has been upgraded. No matter how fierce the octopus tentacles are, they seem to be in slow motion in his eyes. He can avoid Steve's violent attack with his eyes closed. Elegant. Too elegant. In the crowd, Jonah Jameson stared at this scene in a daze and couldn't help clapping his hands. Boss, he is Spider-Man. Eddie reminded him. What? Spider-Man? Jonah came back to his senses and immediately pointed at Charlotte's figure and cursed. Shit, don't think you can fool me by changing into black pajamas. I'm going to write a report about Spider-Man and accuse him of his violent behavior. While Jonah was shouting, Charlotte suddenly retreated, and the crystal spider silk in her hand flashed a cold light. Puff puff puff. In an instant, the rioting blood-colored tentacles turned into tiny pieces in the spider silk trap. The terrifying tentacles were crawling on the ground, as disgusting as blood-red maggots. Shit. The sudden scene made Steve's face change drastically. Before he could activate the blood-colored spine to generate tentacles again, Charlotte, who had changed into a spider silk launcher, raised her hand and shot spider silk all over the sky. Puff puff puff. The spider silk exploded and enveloped Steve. As Charlotte dragged him vigorously, Steve fell in front of Charlotte. Damn bugs. Buzz, Steve roared, and the harsh sound wave spread, and the red and blue light between Charlotte's eyebrows flashed. The 50% increase in mental resistance allowed him to ignore the interference of sound waves. The next second, Charlotte raised his foot and stepped on Steve's back, his 5 fingers forming claws and piercing into his back. After observing for so long, he was sure that this was his weakness. Chapter 65 finally died. Puff. As expected, the moment Charlotte locked Steve's spine with 5 fingers, the harsh high-frequency sound wave stopped abruptly, and Steve became extremely weak and could no longer condense the octopus tentacles. Oh, my back. In Steve's weak groan, Charlotte's arm strength burst out and forcibly pulled out Steve's spine. Rip-ah. The moment the spine was pulled out, Steve's scream became extremely shrill. He seemed to have anticipated his own end without being able to struggle. His hands and feet trembled, and he didn't say a single harsh word, but just silently crawled towards the crystal ice coffin in the wreckage. The distance was only a few meters away, but at this moment, Steve couldn't reach it, even if he tried his best. His back was a bloody mess, and his movements became slower and slower in the pool of blood, but he still refused to stop. Looking at the crystal coffin that was so close, Steve's eyes blurred. Carter. He called his lover's name, as if this could warm his cold heart a little. And this bloody scene shocked everyone present. My god, this is too cruel. The terrible Black Spider-Man. Captain Steve is finished. Monsters, they are all monsters. New York does not need these monsters to protect us, they will destroy us. At this moment, fear and anxiety quickly spread among the crowd, but no one dared to step forward to accuse and scold. They dared to judge the red and blue Spider-Man at will, because Spider-Man only arrests criminals and never kills people. But for the Black Spider-Man, they lost this courage. Even the police officers led by George were frightened at this moment and dared not disturb him. This is the first time they have seen Spider-Man so cruel. Bullying the good and fearing the evil is perfectly interpreted at this moment. At the same time, Charlotte looked at this scene quietly. He threw away the spine that had returned to black, slowly raised his right fist, and planned to send the other party on his last journey. Sympathizing with the enemy is equivalent to suicide. He doesn't want to die now. Suddenly, a strange sound came from the crystal coffin that was about to melt in the wreckage, and both Steve and Charlotte were stunned. Kakakaka as the crystal coffin cracked rapidly. Carter, who was wearing a red floral dress, slowly propped up her stiff body, her face somewhat helpless. She had woken up a long time ago, but because her body was too stiff, after being frozen for 70 years, she could not make any movements. Fortunately, after winning the resurrection match, her body was strengthened to a certain extent, and the high temperature after the crash melted the damn ice coffin, so she could truly be resurrected. Carter. Seeing Carter resurrected, Steve quickly crawled towards him, as if he had a last breath. You are alive. How is it possible? He looked at Carter in front of him in disbelief, wanting to reach out and touch him, but afraid that it was an illusion before his death. Carter turned her head and looked at the embarrassed Steve. Her eyes were unusually calm and even revealed a hint of sarcasm. I have always been sober, Steve Rogers. Now it seems that your plan has failed, right? As she said, she looked at the black figure who was slowly approaching. Charlotte Parker, it is you. She smiled. Charlotte nodded. I guessed right. We are from the same world. I'm very happy to meet you again. Carter smiled as usual, but her face turned cold again when she looked at Steve. Don't show such a disgusting expression. I taught you how to fight, and I fought for your super soldier serum. You betrayed me and everyone. You deserve to die. You guys. Although Steve was surprised that Charlotte and Carter knew each other, he couldn't care about it at this time. He lay on the ground in embarrassment, with a bitter face. With trembling hands, he forced himself to suppress his nausea, and stuffed a piece of octopus tentacle meat covered with mud into his mouth and chewed it, thus gaining the strength to speak. Yes, I thank you for teaching me a lot. I should repay you, but even if I was injected with a super soldier serum, what would it matter? Those officers just wanted me to be a mascot. They made me perform on the stage and say things in front of everyone that no one believed. Do you know what they said about me behind my back? They said I was a clown, a woman who didn't dare to go to the battlefield, a poor guy who could only survive on women. I wanted to prove myself, but the result was confinement. I clearly blew up so many bunkers and saved many people. In their eyes, any soldier injected with the serum could do this. I didn't accept it. They just treated me as a lab mouse. Other mice died, but I survived. This was their credit and had nothing to do with me. I couldn't refute it because I knew that even if I became a super soldier, I was just a soldier and I had no right to refute them. From that moment on, I knew the importance of power. I must become them. I must have absolute right to speak, and that is the meaning of my life. For this goal, I met John during an operation to encircle and suppress Hydra. I let him go, and he repaid me. We became friends. I joined them and learned a lot of their secrets. They were also conducting super soldier experiments, and I volunteered to be their guinea pig because they gave me enough respect. The experiment went smoothly, and the new super soldier serum was born, and I became stronger. But the powerful me was still very small in the war, and I couldn't subvert the world, because I was just a soldier, a super soldier with limited power. I knew very well that after this era, I would die miserably with superpowers, and they didn't allow such soldiers to exist. They were afraid that they couldn't control me, and I didn't want to be controlled by them. This era was cruel, especially for me. The fate of heroes was already doomed. I want to live to the next era. That is my stage. The frozen plan began, and the clone with my memory and John would help me complete it. And I also accepted the most powerful power of Hydra, which was an unprecedented experience. I freed myself, and was completely free. Steve said a lot. He looked at Carter, and a trace of guilt flashed in his eyes. At the dance that night, I was very happy that you could date me, but I didn't expect that you had discovered my secret. So you killed her. Charlotte spoke. Steve took a deep breath. Yes, if she doesn't die, I will die. Hydra's power has not yet been fully integrated. I was very weak at that time and could not escape from the barracks at all. You told me all this. You think I should forgive you? Carter was able to stand up. She looked down at Steve and said seriously, I don't object to your pursuit of power, but you shouldn't target your friends and compatriots. They trusted you so much, but you turned them into demons. I don't need anyone's forgiveness. Steve laughed bitterly. Ha ha ha. John taught me that if you want to get something, you must give up something. Friendship, love, these are not necessary. But I failed, which proves that I haven't completely let go of these things. I shouldn't have taken you away with me, and finally was targeted by this bug. He looked at Charlotte with unwillingness on his face. I really can't accept this, Charlotte Parker. You're really lucky. That mutant spider gave you superpowers that everyone envies. If I had known this would happen, I shouldn't have agreed to this meaningless biological experiment. Your parents betrayed me, and you ended me. I just lost to myself. But don't be complacent. After I die, all the defective mutant spiders in the laboratory will spread throughout the city. I'm going to kill you. Before Steve could finish, Charlotte punched him in the head. So annoying. Chapter 66. The gears of fate begin to turn. The headless body fell in front of Carter, who was unable to react for a moment. You. Don't look at me like that. That's what he did to me last time. Charlotte said, glancing at the prompt message. Friendly neighbor successfully avenges American hips. Restart times +8 but. Carter wanted to say something. Well, actually I'm worse than him. No, what I want to say is that he hasn't finished talking. Maybe about you. Carter said with a serious face. Although I don't know what the relationship between Steve and your parents is, the mutant spiders he mentioned seem to be very troublesome. You are too impulsive. Charlotte waved her hand. It doesn't matter. We can probably guess what the villain said before he died, except for threatening words or playing dumb. Anyway, he won't tell us what we want to know easily, and hearing too much will be more troublesome. He didn't expect that the research project of mutant spiders was actually related to Hydra. And from what Steve said before he died, it can be judged that there are still many mutant spiders, but they are all defective products, which may cause a lot of trouble in the future. This is Steve's final revenge on him. Hearing this, Carter blinked. I don't quite understand what you mean. Watch more movies during this period, and you will understand. As he said, Charlotte picked up the black spine on the ground, and looked around the crowd. Do you want to go with me, or wait for someone from S.H.I.E.L.D. to pick you up? He asked. S.H.I.E.L.D. Carter looked puzzled. Charlotte explained. It's the strategic scientific core of your time. You should be very familiar with it. So that's how it is. I understand. Carter suddenly realized, and then said, Steve's matter must be explained. If you kill him, this will cause you a lot of trouble. I need to stay and explain it clearly. And the remaining forces of Hydra have not yet collapsed. I have to help them eliminate those guys. This is my mission. Charlotte thought for a while. Okay, then the next thing is up to you. This is my mobile phone number. Contact me at any time. By the way, don't reveal my identity. He gave the phone number, and then shot her spider silk to jump onto the street lamp in the spotlight of the crowd, and then climbed up the tall building on the roadside with several jumps, and completely disappeared from people's sight. Looking at the direction where Charlotte left, Carter's face gradually became serious. Times have changed, and it is unknown how many resources she can mobilize from the past. She is not worried that she will become a guinea pig because of resurrection. After all, Steve can wake up from the ice, and she can use the same reason. Hey, lady, do you need help? At this time, George bravely stepped forward to ask. Carter shook her head slightly, but then she thought of something and nodded again. I need a pair of boots, leather boots, and I want to make a phone call. Okay, I'll arrange it. George paused. Do you know Spider-Man? Yes, a new friend. Carter told the truth. Then do you know who he is? George asked again. The distance was too far just now, and no one could hear what the two said clearly. Carter looked at George's police uniform. Sorry, this is confidential. 1 o'clock in the morning, 117 Blake Street. The lights in the room had been turned off long ago. Ben Parker and Aunt May had already gone to bed, and Charlotte did not disturb them. He quietly opened the door and quietly placed the prepared gifts at the door of their bedroom. Yes, he went traveling again. I don't know how many times this excuse can be used. I have to find a chance to move out. Then, Charlotte returned to his room and took out the mobile phone hidden in the cabinet. Beep, a series of messages flashed across the screen when he turned on the phone. Harry, Mary Jane, Professor Kurt, Aunt May and others have all looked for him. Scanning these messages, there is nothing important. Charlotte plans to deal with it tomorrow. In front of the desk, he turned on the desk lamp, took out his toolbox, and personally repaired the spider silk launcher that was damaged by Steve. The spider silk launcher is an independent device, and a nano battle suit cannot automatically repair it. Charlotte needs to do it himself. Fortunately, the principle of the spider silk launcher is not complicated. Charlotte repaired it in just half an hour. As for synthesizing the backup artificial spider silk protein, he still has to go to Professor Kurt's laboratory to borrow equipment. Soon, he placed the spider silk launcher into the spider logo on his chest, stood up and stretched, intending to take a nap first. The next moment, a rustling sound came from outside the window, which instantly attracted Charlotte's attention. Thick, be careful, don't let them find you. Don't worry, it's okay, it's safe here. The street lights flickered slightly, and Charlotte stuck his head out of the window, only to see two men in black and white striped prison uniforms hiding in the corner, as if they were thinking about where to sneak into the house. Seeing this, Charlotte frowned. The nearest prison is at least 30 kilometers away from Queens. How could two escaped guys escape here? Is it such a coincidence? Yes, it is such a coincidence. It's an outrageous coincidence. If I didn't come back tonight, wouldn't Uncle Ben and Aunt May be wrong? It's because I'm back, so they showed up. Charlotte suddenly thought of this possibility. After absorbing half of the spider totem of Lizard Parker, plus this resurrection match, he already has 3.5 spider totems. An ordinary Spider-Man has 1 spider totem, which is enough to destroy his family, not to mention that he has so many on him. The gears of fate began to turn. He had to take corresponding measures. Immediately, he tapped the spider logo on his chest, and the red and blue battle suit covered his whole body, and then he turned over and went downstairs. Who is it? Spider-Man. Who is Spider-Man? It seems you have been in there for a long time, and have never heard of the story of the friendly neighbors. Swoosh. Charlotte casually shot spider silk to tear off their pants, and then hung the two upside down under the street light. By the way, she sealed their mouths to avoid disturbing the nearby neighbor's rest. Friendly neighbors never disturb their neighbors. He did not return to the room, but took advantage of the night to fly to the city. He could not stay at home. As long as Ben Parker and Aunt May were still around, they might lose their lives at any time because of the spider totem. Before finding a solution, he had to move out. Oh, Harry. Charlotte suddenly remembered this. He flew onto the billboard and took out his mobile phone. Beep, hello, Harry, where are you? City Center Hospital, Ward 166. When Charlotte arrived here, he saw the doctor hanging the stethoscope on his chest again and shaking his head at the figure with a bandaged face on the bed. Well, notify his family. The doctor turned to the nurse. What? Upon hearing this, Charlotte's pupils trembled instantly. He strode to the bed, threw himself on the other person and wailed loudly. Harry. Oh no. 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 10,000 words omitted here. Barton, who was awakened, opened his eyes and saw a strange thing pounced on him and roared loudly. The corners of his mouth twitched uncontrollably, and he pointed to the bed next door and said, "Hey, buddy, Harry is over there." Charlotte. On the bed next door, Harry, who was wrapped in bandages all over his body, barely turned sideways and turned his head away from Charlotte. Actually, I don't know him well. Charlotte. He silently stood up and looked at the doctor with resentful eyes. The doctor shrugged. Sorry, I just want his family to come to the hospital to pay the bill. Charlotte. Damn. Chapter 67. The unlucky agent begins hospitalization. After the doctor left, Charlotte came to Harry. What happened? He asked. Harry glanced at Barton next to him. Nothing, just a small matter. He injured himself with a pumpkin bomb. Barton said. No, I just wanted to blow up the plane. Harry became excited. Barton said sarcastically. Yes, but in the end you were injured more seriously than me. You are just lucky. Have you thought about how to explain to the commander later? I don't need to explain. I look more like a victim. You should explain. Barton. What this guy said makes sense. He was speechless. At this time, Charlotte also understood. Harry's injury was caused by himself. Of course, this does not rule out the possibility that it was caused by the spider totem. But now it seems that Harry is still lucky and should be fine in the short term. The premise is that the two cannot meet frequently. Beep at this time, Barton and Harry's communicators rang. How are you? In the virtual screen, Nick Fury was also wrapped in bandages, and his condition did not look much better than Harry. Nick Fury asked, and Harry answered before Barton could speak. I was seriously injured trying to stop Spider-Man. Barton. Nick Fury was a little surprised. Harry, I'm glad you're on our side. Commander, Barton wanted to state the truth, but Nick Fury interrupted his explanation the next second. But I just received news that the former Agent Carter is back. She was frozen by Steve for 70 years. She can prove that Steve is the new leader of Hydra. What? Barton was shocked. Captain is actually Hydra. How is it possible? He was a hero of the last century. Nick Fury shook his head. I can't believe it either, but Agent Carter has evidence to prove it all. Also, on the coast of Brooklyn, many people saw Captain become a monster. Those red octopus tentacles are exactly the same as the totem of Hydra. We misunderstood Spider-Man. As he said that, he glanced at Charlotte who appeared on the screen. Harry, is this your friend? He looks very good. Can we invite him to work at S.H.I.E.L.D.? Harry. The slam excuse. Without waiting for him to speak, Charlotte suddenly took a step back and disappeared from the screen, obviously rejecting him completely. It seems that this guy has discovered something. But it's normal to think about it. How long he disappeared. Spider-Man disappeared. If Harry hadn't joined S.H.I.E.L.D., he might not have been targeted. After all, there are so many people in the world, and S.H.I.E.L.D. wouldn't care about an ordinary young man with a stunning appearance, humor, good character, self-discipline, self-love, hard work, good temperament, perfect figure and a strong sense of justice. But with Harry's joining, everyone around him will be under the surveillance of S.H.I.E.L.D. Charlotte is one of them. Whether it is Hydra, which has not been completely eliminated, or S.H.I.E.L.D. now, more and more people have guessed his identity. This is not a good thing. But he has thought of a response. Then, Nick Fury connected with other agents again. In the picture, Coulson, Natasha and other agents all appeared in the camera as mummies. They will not be able to leave the hospital in a short time. It can be seen that Charlotte's hand is not light. But he thinks he has shown mercy. Charlotte had no interest in these scumbags. He did not stay for too long, and soon left the hospital, changing into his spider suit, and flying around the city. Having confiscated a lot of ill-gotten gains, Charlotte was in a much better situation than the other Peter Parker, and could definitely live in a nice apartment. But if you want to truly achieve financial freedom, this method is obviously not a long-term solution. Artificial spider silk material is a good project, and you can find a reliable partner. He immediately thought of Harry's Osborn group, but this takes time. As he thought about it, the glider under Charlotte's armpit suddenly shrank, and then flew down to the forest park. Swoosh above the treetops, Charlotte's wrist shot out a large spider web, and then he just lay on the spider web. He put his hands on the back of his head, looked at the stars in the night sky and fell asleep. The tense nerves during this period of time were relieved. The next day, amid the exclamations of the patrolmen, Charlotte woke up and stretched. Another beautiful day, hello. He waved to the patrolmen, then flew away, and shot Spider Silk to disappear in the forest park. Not long after, Charlotte returned to Blake Street again. Looking at the passing police car, he turned and walked to the door of his house. The moment he opened the door, he saw Ben Parker and Aunt May tearing the gift wrapping with joy. Little Charlotte, you came back last night, didn't you? Aunt May tried a new silk scarf in front of the full-length mirror, with an unstoppable smile on her face. Charlotte nodded. Yes, I went to see Harry again later. He came to the table and poured a glass of water. Ben Parker fiddled with his pipe and said, Harry said you went traveling again, but I didn't believe it at all. Really? What do you think I went to do? Charlotte took a sip of water and said casually. Ben Parker stopped what he was doing and looked at Charlotte seriously. Tell me honestly, are you living with a girl outside? Puff. Hearing this, Charlotte spit out a mouthful of water with a look of astonishment on his face. You are so smart. You actually guessed it right. He grinned and continued, I have grown up, so I decided to move out. Do you have any objections? He asked Aunt May. Aunt May turned around and came to Charlotte with a look of relief. She rubbed Charlotte's face and smiled kindly. Little Charlotte is so sensible. If you continue to live here, it will only waste food money. Your Uncle Ben can no longer afford your life. Charlotte's mouth twitched. I don't usually ask you for pocket money. It doesn't matter. You are an adult. It's time to move out, Aunt May said, and went back to the bedroom. She took out her own small treasury from the cabinet, carefully counted the bills in it, and then thought for a while, then took out a crumpled bill and handed it to Charlotte. Don't be too stingy when you go out on a date. I know, I must buy the biggest ice cream. Oh, silly child, how can you only treat people to ice cream on a date? But the money you give is only enough to buy ice cream. I'm old and can't hear. Charlotte, is it Mary Jane next door? Ben Parker asked suddenly. Charlotte thought for a moment. It shouldn't be. What do you mean it should be? Well, it's definitely not. Seeing him deny it, Ben Parker was finally relieved. You don't seem to want me and Mary Jane to be together. Charlotte was a little confused. Ben Parker never cared about these things before. Of course not. Why? Because I suspect Mary Jane has a tendency to violence. Ben Parker put down the pipe in his hand and said mysteriously, there was a big commotion in her house this morning. It seems that there was a spider in the house. She actually beat her father into the hospital. So outrageous? Charlotte frowned, and his sixth sense told him that this matter was very wrong. Thanks again to Unit 00 Wildfire for the 10,000 points reward. Thanks again to Infinite Winking for the 500 points reward. Thanks to Bookfriend 202209262127377732 for the 500 points reward. Happy, Deg Point Deg, Degreezo. Chapter 68 Spider-Man vs. Spider-Man. When are you going to move out? Ben Parker changed the subject. Charlotte came back to his senses. Now, I have already found a house when I came. Well, it seems that you are in a hurry. Yes, after all, if I stay for one more minute, I can't guess what will happen next. Charlotte said as he walked into the room and began to pack his luggage. I'll help you. Aunt May followed him in. Beside the bed, a long object wrapped in clothes attracted Aunt May's attention. What is this? She reached out subconsciously, but was stopped by Charlotte. You can't touch this thing. Charlotte put the things into the suitcase and explained, this is something left by a friend. A very good friend? Yes, a friend of life and death. Charlotte looked serious. Not long after, Charlotte packed his luggage, said goodbye to Ben Parker and Aunt May, and then he walked out of the house and stopped a taxi on the roadside. Before getting in the car, he looked at Mary Jane's house thoughtfully. 13th District, Eason apartment. Thank you, he said to the driver, then took out his mobile phone and made a call. Boom. As the taxi gradually drove out of the street, Ben Parker and Aunt May sighed at the window. Little Charlotte has grown up. Aunt May's eyes were red and her face was full of reluctance. Ben Parker put his coat on Aunt May and comforted her. Don't worry, he will take care of himself. There will always be a day like this. I know, but... Aunt May hesitated, and then she leaned gently on Ben Parker's shoulder. In my eyes, he will always be a child. District 13, Eason apartment. Charlotte dragged her luggage into the elevator. The 14th floor, a very unlucky number. But the agent praised it to the sky, and the price was also suitable. Charlotte didn't have time to choose slowly, so after looking at the photos of the room, he paid the rent directly. Beep soon, the elevator door opened, and Charlotte walked to the door of 1404. Before he could take out the key to open the door suddenly made a light sound, and a middle-aged man with silver hair opened the door and saw Charlotte, and immediately said enthusiastically, Mr. Charlotte, you're here so soon. I haven't finished cleaning for you yet. Walter Hardy looked apologetic. Your agency is still responsible for cleaning? Charlotte looked puzzled. This is my part-time job, and it's charged separately. Well, I have no choice when I'm middle-aged. I understand. As Walter walked in, Charlotte saw that the garbage on the floor had not been cleaned up yet, but the layout of the room was no different from the picture, and he was basically satisfied. "Mr. Charlotte, please wait a moment, I'll be done soon." Walter first asked Charlotte to sit on the clean sofa, and then said to the room, "Felicia, go and throw away the garbage. Here I come." The girl in the room responded, and she walked out of the room with a broom. When she saw Charlotte in a red and blue coat in the living room, she couldn't help but exclaimed, "Charlotte Parker?" Felicia's eyes became strange. Wilson was surprised. "Do you know him?" "I know him, but he shouldn't know me," Felicia said and lowered her head to sort out the garbage bags. Wilson was very confused when he saw this scene. He turned to ask Charlotte, "Do you know each other?" Charlotte spread his hands, looking confused. "Should I know each other?" He looked at Felicia in front of him and saw that she had developed very well at a young age. Ahem, she had a head full of white hair at a young age, so pitiful. "Well, it seems that I have seen her somewhere." The school forum. Seeing that Charlotte was paying attention to Felicia's white hair, Walter introduced, "We are from Denmark. She is my daughter, Felicia Hardy." Charlotte smiled. "I remember that she is also a freshman at Empire State University. Some classmates have secretly taken photos of her. She is very popular with boys." Hearing this, Felicia paused. "Classmate Charlotte, you are also very popular with seniors. I have seen your selfies." Felicia kept a friendly smile and continued to clean. Charlotte's face was dark. "It has been so long. How can anyone still remember this? Damn Norman." Walter found that the atmosphere was a little wrong, so he cleaned the room faster and then hurriedly said goodbye with his daughter. After the two left, Charlotte walked into the bedroom with his suitcase. He found a secret corner, hid the rat spine, and then began to pack his clothes. Walter, Felicia, could it be? Charlotte thought in his heart and quickly packed his luggage. Seeing that the time was almost up, he changed his coat and went downstairs to get a taxi. Half an hour later, Imperial University. Professor Kurt's laboratory. "Oh, Charlotte, thank you for your help. The Osborne Group is willing to continue to fund my research. Thank you so much, you are my god." As soon as Charlotte arrived at the laboratory, Professor Kurt thanked him. Seeing that Professor Kurt did not have any abnormality, Charlotte smiled slightly. "It has nothing to do with me, you should thank Harry." "Harry?" Professor Kurt was stunned. "Yes, he wants to fund your research," Charlotte said. "Oh, then I have to thank him." Professor Kurt finished speaking, and the assistant beside him said, "Harry has asked for leave and is not in school. That's a pity. I'll wait for him to come back and go to the company to thank him in person." After speaking, Professor Kurt put on his coat and went out. "Harry is in the hospital," Charlotte reminded. "Hospital? Then I have to go see him even more." Professor Kurt hurried out, and Charlotte looked at the assistant beside him. "I want to use the experimental equipment here." "No problem, the professor has explained it." Half an hour later, Charlotte made enough artificial spider silk protein and left the laboratory with satisfaction. "Hey, Charlotte Parker." In the school corridor, a familiar guy blocked Charlotte's way. "Who are you?" Charlotte looked at the boy in front of her with a puzzled look. "I'm Jenny. It was you who took off my pants last time and embarrassed me in front of everyone." Jenny gritted his teeth and said, "Oh." Charlotte suddenly realized, "I remember. Do you want to take revenge on me now?" "Of course, I have transformed, and today I will also embarrass you in front of everyone." Jenny straightened his back and gradually showed a sly smile. Charlotte shrugged, "Who cares?" After saying that, he turned and left. "Damn guy, don't look down on me." The angry Jenny swung his hand violently, and white spider silk shot out from his wrist, but before he could lock on Charlotte, he was dodged by Charlotte sideways. At the same time, Charlotte subconsciously grasped the attacking white spider silk, and his face changed slightly. "What is this? What?" Seeing Charlotte easily avoid his sneak attack, Jenny was even more shocked. He pulled the spider silk hard, trying to break free from Charlotte's palm. Charlotte let go, and Jenny suddenly sat on the ground, making him cry out in pain instantly. "Oh, shit." Looking at the embarrassed Jenny, Charlotte narrowed his eyes slightly and suddenly found the purple red spots on the back of the other's hand. The wounds from the mutant spider bites have not healed yet, and he is very familiar with this kind of marks. "So, this guy's also Spider-Man?" If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69, The Best Spider-Man Impersonator. No, this guy's power is no different from that of an ordinary person. He just got the superpower of shooting spider silk. After a moment of thinking, Charlotte suddenly had an idea. Immediately, he pointed at Jenny, who was sitting on the ground, and exclaimed, "Oh, it's Spider-Man." His voice was so loud that it instantly attracted the attention of the people around him. What? Spider-Man? How is it possible? Spider-Man came to school? As the classmates around him quickly gathered around, Jenny's face was a little flustered. "I'm not. Look what this is." Charlotte raised the white spider silk in his hand, pointed at Jenny and said excitedly, "This is the spider silk shot from his hand. He is Spider-Man." What? As soon as this was said, everyone looked at Jenny excitedly. Feeling everyone's hot gaze, Jenny was very uncomfortable. He wanted to explain, but saw Charlotte striding forward. "Oh my god, you are Spider-Man. It's incredible." "I'm not. You are," Charlotte said, inadvertently holding the other's wrist. "No one is more familiar with how to shoot spider silk than him." Puff. Instantly, a spider silk sprayed out from Jenny's wrist and hung high on the wall, and the scene finally boiled. "Oh my god, Jenny is Spider-Man. Oh my god, am I seeing right? Oh my god." Suddenly, everyone swarmed around Jenny, curiously groping his body, and even many female classmates confessed their love in public. And Jenny gradually lost himself in this wonderful feeling. "I'm not okay, I'm Spider-Man." After Jenny said this, he was completely relieved. "I'm Spider-Man. Ha ha ha." Outside the crowd, Charlotte smiled with satisfaction when he heard Jenny's active admission. "Very good, the witnesses and evidence are all there, and no one doubts my identity. He is not Spider-Man." Suddenly, a weak female voice came from the side. Charlotte turned around and looked at the blonde girl with delicate features in front of him curiously. "What did you say?" The girl shook her head. "He is not Spider-Man. Definitely not." Charlotte frowned. "Have you seen Spider-Man?" "No." The girl took a deep breath and said in a firm tone, "Spider-Man has been hiding his identity. How could he admit his identity in public? But this is the fact," Charlotte said. The girl looked at Charlotte. "I know you, Charlotte Parker. Time will prove everything. He is definitely not Spider-Man." After that, the girl turned around and left with a book. Looking at the girl's back, Charlotte couldn't help but touch his chin. "She must be my loyal fan." He grinned. Charlotte whistled lightly, turned around and took a step, and there was a faint sound under his feet that ordinary people could not detect. He raised his foot and saw the pink spider that was crushed. There are indeed mutant spiders in the school. I don't know how many people have been bitten. Charlotte's heart sank. After leaving the school, Charlotte received a call from Carter. "I'm Charlotte Parker. I know. I got the news that Spider-Man appeared in your school." "That's not me." "I understand. It's the mutant spider released by Steve. Let's meet." "No problem." Half an hour later, in a coffee shop near the school, boom, a black retro motorcycle stopped on the side of the road, and the tall motorcycle girl attracted the attention of passers-by. "Hey, here." Charlotte waved under the tarpaulin on the side of the road. "Hi, Charlotte." In the sun, Carter took off her helmet and shook her golden curly hair. The stunning scene made passers-by around couldn't help but marvel. She sat opposite Charlotte in a black tight leather jacket and leather pants. Seeing Charlotte hesitate to speak, Carter raised the corner of her mouth slightly. "What's wrong? Are you attracted by my beauty?" "No." Charlotte shook his head. He said seriously, "I really want to know, are your leather pants breathable?" "What?" "I want to say, if you can't help farting." "Stop, don't say it." Carter's face was dark. "You are not a child anymore. You don't even have the most basic aesthetic appreciation of beauty. I'm very worried about you." Charlotte spread his hands. "Thank you for your concern. Okay, let's get to the point." The waiter brought a cup of coffee, and Carter thanked him. "Is it another Spider-Man?" she said seriously. Charlotte nodded. "It can barely be considered Spider-Man." "What do you mean?" He only has the ability to shoot spider silk, and his other attributes are no different from normal people. Really? Carter breathed a sigh of relief. Maybe more low-profile versions of Spider-Man will appear next. No, I want to correct one thing. That's not called low profile, that's called beggar version. Don't worry about these details. Carter continued. Other Spider-Man appears. It will be easier for me to help you conceal your identity. But you asked me to meet here. How do you explain this? Charlotte smiled. I have planned it a long time ago. Carter put on sunglasses, seemingly because the sunlight was a little glaring. After I returned to SHIELD, I replaced Steve as the new captain. I have modified your information in the official system, so they won't misunderstand. The captain shouldn't have this authority, right? Charlotte was a little surprised. Carter nodded. Indeed, the previous Steve didn't have it, but I'm different. The entire Carter family stands behind me. My appearance has given the declining family hope to rise. They have won a lot of authority for me. Oh, I understand. If Steve succeeds in overthrowing the order of this world, your family will also be affected. Charlotte suddenly realized. So what am I now? Carter adjusted his sunglasses. 70 years ago, my closest sister was separated from me in the war. 70 years later, the first thing I did, when I woke up from the ice, was to find her whereabouts. Unfortunately, she has been dead for a long time, and I can only find her descendants. Charlotte had a bad feeling before the story was finished. So, Charlotte Parker, I'm your elder now. Carter smiled. Charlotte. Mother, no, is grandma's best friend so exciting? He said with a dark face. Can you change your identity? It's too late, little Charlotte. The elder should call you that, right? Carter wanted to reach out and touch Charlotte's head, but was interrupted by a slap. Don't, come on. Charlotte rolled her eyes. Take advantage of me. You'd better pray that you don't enter the resurrection match. But then he changed the subject. But if you are willing to give me New Year's money every year, I can accept it. Carter. She underestimated this guy's lack of integrity. Okay, that motorcycle is for you. She threw the key to Charlotte casually and continued. There is one more thing. The clues of Hydra have been erased. The only clues left are those who have been bitten by mutant spiders. I need you to help me keep an eye on those guys. No problem. Charlotte agreed very straightforwardly. Get rid of Hydra as soon as possible. Helping you is helping me. As soon as the voice fell, a shrill scream suddenly came from the sky above his head. Be careful. Charlotte's heart moved, and the moment she flew over to pounce on Carter, a red and blue figure fell from the sky, tore the tarpaulin, and fell to the position between the two. Bang! In an instant, the tables and chairs were shattered, blood splattered, and the corpse in red and blue spider pajamas was horrible. Charlotte raised her hand to wipe the blood on her face, looked up at the tall building, and the corners of her mouth twitched uncontrollably, imitating Spider-Man jumping off a building. What a genius. I try to make my daily life more interesting. Please don't keep the book. It depends on you to recommend it. Please, please, I will definitely update it after it is put on the shelves. If I can go to Sanjiang, I will directly release all my saved manuscripts. Chapter 70 Spider-Man Mask. It's Spider-Man. He's dead. Spider-Man jumped off the building. No, he was just wearing pajamas. He's not the real Spider-Man. He must be a crazy fan of Spider-Man. Soon, with passers-by watching, Carter examined the body. There are spider silk-like residues on the wrist, and he was also bitten by a mutant spider, she said to Charlotte. Charlotte shook her head. He thought he had become Spider-Man, and couldn't wait to imitate him. Carter sighed. He shouldn't be so impulsive. People who have been bitten by mutant spiders, their mutation speed is very fast. How long did it take you to have those abilities? She looked at Charlotte. Charlotte turned and left, and Carter hurriedly followed. On the side of the road, the sound of sirens came from far away. It took me a whole night, Charlotte said. Carter thought for a moment, and then asked, how long did it take you to adapt to those abilities? I mean, how long did it take you to practice jumping off the building? One night. So fast? Carter was surprised. Have you ever failed? Of course I have. Peter said that you had played 2 resurrection matches before, so you were also killed by falling. Charlotte rolled her eyes. Only a fool would practice at such a high place at the beginning. The place where I practiced before was no more than 3 floors, so I wouldn't die from falling. Carter became even more curious. Then how did you come up with the idea of using spider silk as a means of transportation? Aren't you afraid that the spider silk can't bear your weight? Also, if your arm strength is not enough, will it be difficult to swing up, and will your muscles be torn? There are so many billboards on the roadside. Have you ever hit them? If you don't have enough spider silk halfway through flying, will you be killed by falling? Carter's questions came one after another, and Charlotte couldn't help rubbing her eyebrows. I'll explain it later. Now you should go back to SHIELD to issue a statement, so that those who have been bitten by spiders should not easily test their abilities. Hearing this, Carter remembered the business. Yes, I have to go back quickly, little Charlotte. See you another day. Goodbye. Carter took 2 steps and stopped. She turned and held out her hand. My car keys. You've already given it to me. Charlotte waved on the side of the road and personally hailed a taxi for Carter. How thoughtful. He grinned. Carter shook his head helplessly. You're amazing. Remember to give me the helmet. Bitch. Watching Carter get into the car, Charlotte tossed the car keys in her hand. The gift from the elders looked great. He put on the helmet, rode on the motorcycle, and roared into the street. On the other side, Carter returned to the SHIELD building. In the office, she called Agent Hill. Tell Nick Fury to cancel the surveillance on Charlotte Parker. Are you sure? Agent Hill hesitated. Carter said sternly, I should have this right. Yes, but Charlotte is probably. I just met him, and I found that the real Spider-Man is not him, but he is related to him. It is probably a smoke bomb sent to us by Spider-Man. Agent Hill thought for a moment, throwing out an obvious target to attract our attention and disrupt our sight. So when Spider-Man disappears, Charlotte will also disappear. This is what he arranged. That's right. But why withdraw the surveillance on Charlotte Parker? It doesn't make sense anymore. With the emergence of more mutant Spider-Men, we will face greater troubles. We need Spider-Man's help. Withdrawing the surveillance is a respect for him. Is that so? I understand. Agent Hill thought for a moment, then left the office and informed Nick Fury. Commander, withdraw the surveillance on Charlotte. This is what Agent Carter meant. In the ward, Nick Fury frowned. I understand. Do as she said. 1 to 2, Commander, it's your turn. Harry urged. Agent Hill, I'm very busy now. Agent Carter will take care of the rest. That's it. King Bomb. I can't afford it. Haha, I won. Pay me. Beep. The call was hung up, and Agent Hill patted her forehead helplessly. These guys are so lucky, they can finally have a holiday. She came to her workstation and began to arrange the matters that Carter had asked her to do. On her desk, there was a palm-sized Spider-Man poster. Even if Charlotte Parker is not Spider-Man, he must know Spider-Man. It's a pity that he doesn't have a holiday, otherwise I must ask that guy. Looking at the Spider-Man poster on the table, Agent Hill lay on the table and sighed. Could the black Spider-Man who defeated Steve be him? I really want his autograph. Agent Hill. Someone called the police, and another Spider-Man died. Oh, I see. She quickly covered the poster on the table with documents, and hurried to the scene. Time passed and it was getting dark. Night is Spider-Man's home court. Agent Hill, the 5th Spider-Man has appeared. Here he comes. After working until 11 o'clock in the evening, Agent Hill no longer wanted to hear the word Spider-Man. In Banner's laboratory, he had already collected 3 bodies of Spider-Man. He was going crazy. What on earth is wrong with this world? Can anyone tell me? Banner's wailing came from the laboratory. At the same time, in the private area on the top floor of Stark Tower, Tony watched the Spider-Man incidents constantly reported on TV, and the coffee in his hand never touched a sip. Tony, what's wrong? Pepper came behind Tony and gently massaged his shoulders. Tony came back to his senses. Spider-Man is dead. 3 of them are dead. It should be Spider-Man's fans. Too crazy. Pepper sighed. Tony shook his head. I don't think it's right. What? I think the real Spider-Man is in trouble. As he said that, he put down the coffee, got up and walked towards the laboratory. Are you going to study those cold metal toys again? Pepper was a little dissatisfied. Tony said without turning his head, that's not a toy, that's the meaning of my existence. I must figure out those things as soon as possible. Maybe I can repay Spider-Man. After all, he saved me. But you don't even know who he is. You said he always wears tight pajamas. That's called a battle suit, and mine is called a battle armor. Soon, the laboratory was filled with rhythmic iron hammering sounds. Ding ding ding, the story of Iron Man is about to begin. The neon city under the night sky. On the big screen in the square, Jonah Jameson talked about the death of Spider-Man this time. He hasn't been so excited for a long time. In front of the camera, he was foul-mouthed and still disdained Spider-Man. However, when he returned home, he immediately closed the curtains and then changed into his homemade spider suit. B-o-b-o-b-o. Jonah jumped on the table with a cigar in his mouth and shot white spider silk from his wrist, making a mess of the house. Ha ha ha, that's awesome. Now I'm Spider-Man too. George was partying at home so excited that he didn't notice a red and blue shadow speeding past outside the window. Chapter 71, Spider-Woman and Gwen. Since 3 o'clock this afternoon, we have received 5 reports of Spider-Man's death. Their true identities have gradually surfaced, but we still have no clue who the real Spider-Man is. Low-rise residential area. Next to the water tank on the roof, Mary Jane was wearing a homemade red and black spider suit, and the tight fabric outlined an attractive curve. She turned off the portable radio beside her, stood up and looked at the city scenery in the distance, and simply stretched her muscles. To become Spider-Man, I will fight. She put on an eye mask to cover the upper half of her face, and her conspicuous long red hair fluttered in the wind. She carefully came to the edge of the roof. However, the 3-story residential building gave her the illusion of standing at the crossroads of fate. The real Spider-Man should be able to swing on the spider web, and at this height, it shouldn't be a problem. She took a deep breath, resisted her trembling legs, and carefully shot out the spider silk and landed it on the billboard opposite. After pulling the spider silk to test it and making sure it was firm, she tried to jump off the roof. Suddenly, a breeze blew by, and a figure flew across the street faster than her. What? Startled, Mary Jane lost her balance and almost fell off the roof. She quickly squatted down to steady herself, and looked at the red and blue figure across the street with lingering fear. Hey, your suit is nice. It seems you are good at using a sewing machine. The Spider-Man across the street waved and greeted, then skillfully launched a spider silk, and flew over to Mary Jane. Mary Jane looked at the Spider-Man in front of her and saw that the other party was also wearing a red and blue suit made of knitted fabric, obviously not the real Spider-Man. She was a little disappointed. Everyone knows that Spider-Man's suit has been replaced with a special metal material, and his eyes will emit blue light. The guy in front of her is just a lucky guy who has been bitten by a mutant spider like her. Hi, what's your name? The other party suddenly asked. I'm Mary Jane. Mary Jane spoke subconsciously, and then immediately found something wrong. No, I'm not Mary Jane. My name is Charlotte Parker. She lied. Charlotte. He looked at Mary Jane in front of him. Other Spider-Men wore cowls, but she wore a lace eye mask. Was she afraid that the criminals were not excited enough? He was powerless to complain. Tonight, he deliberately changed into his old battle suit and used a voice changer just to get close to Mary Jane and find out how Mary Jane's physical attributes were different from other mutants. But he didn't expect that this guy was a little defensive, but not much, and he was a swindler. He continued, Charlotte sounds like a boy's name, so Mary Jane is your real name. No, my name is Charlotte, and Mary Jane is my favorite girl. Mary Jane quickly denied. Charlotte, whether I like you or not, don't you have any silence in your mind? Okay, Mary Jane, do you want to learn to swing spider silk? I'll teach you. No, I'm Charlotte. Okay, Mary Jane. Charlotte pulled Mary Jane over, raised her hand to show her wrist, and demonstrated it on the spot. Look carefully, press this position, use this gesture, yes, this very rock gesture. You can control the length of the spider silk launch. You will feel it clearly after the spider silk locks the target. At this time you need to stop the spider silk launch, and then immediately hold the spider silk and jump down. He was about to demonstrate it himself, but was suddenly interrupted by Mary Jane. Wait, the spider silk is too thin. It may be difficult for me to catch it. Charlotte stumbled and almost fell from the roof. Spider silk can stick to the palm of your hand, and Spider-Man's fingers can eject tiny barbs similar to spiders, which not only allow you to climb walls, but also make it easier to hold the spider silk. Oh, is that so? I learned it. You learned it without me demonstrating it? I didn't say that. Mary Jane was stunned for a moment, then looked around. Charlotte turned around and saw another figure in a spider suit climbing up to the rooftop. The white upper and black lower spider suit wrapped around the slender and petite body, with pink spider webs dotted on the elbows. The most obvious thing was the carefully designed double-sided hood with pink inside and white outside. Charlotte moved her eyes down and found the green ballet shoes on the other person's feet, and immediately understood. Hi, are you also the Spider-Man who was bitten by a spider recently? He waved and greeted. Yes, your skills are very helpful to me. Gwen nodded slightly. Without saying much, she suddenly took a running start and leaped up, and at the same time, she flicked her wrist and the spider silk flew onto the billboard opposite. Against the neon background, her figure outlined a perfect arc in the air. Swish snap. In the blink of an eye, Gwen had already passed between two tall buildings, and after landing, she bent her legs slightly to relieve the excess force. She was as light and graceful as an elf in the moonlight, and every move was just right. It seemed like an innate talent, and as if she had practiced it countless times. The next moment, Charlotte couldn't help but applaud, and then bumped Mary Jane beside her with her shoulder. Look at her, and then look at you. TSK, don't look down on others. I can do it too. The enraged Mary Jane imitated Gwen's movements, and suddenly closed her eyes, after shooting spider silk. I jumped. Jump. Did I really jump? Are you going to jump or not? Charlotte raised her foot and kicked, and Mary Jane immediately screamed, and swung to the roof opposite. Ah. Help, I'm there. Mary Jane, who landed safely, looked around, and then cheered with surprise on her face. Great, I succeeded. Standing up is considered a success. Charlotte flew in front of the other person, and looked down at Mary Jane. Mary Jane. She lowered her head, and saw that she was kneeling in front of Charlotte. Her movements were extremely shameful. My legs are numb. Give me a hand. Okay, Mary Jane. My name is Charlotte. A minute later, the three of them were lying on a huge spider web in the alley. Charlotte glanced at the two of them. Let me go first. I was bitten by a spider last night, and then I woke up and found that I had the ability of Spider-Man. Me too. I accidentally hurt my father, but he deserved it. Mary Jane had long been disappointed with her gambling father. Gwen thought for a while. I was bitten by a spider at school today. My body has changed a lot. My speed and strength have become stronger. I also have the ability to shoot spider silk and climb walls. Mary Jane rubbed her sore shoulders and knees. Although my body has also been strengthened, it doesn't seem to be very exaggerated. Hearing this, Charlotte was thoughtful. After staying with the two for such a long time, his spider totem did not react at all. Their Spider-Man physique is similar to his initial state. Spider-Man with a spider totem cannot be so weak. At this time, Gwen looked at Charlotte. Your learning ability is much stronger than ours. I almost regarded you as a real Spider-Man. Charlotte came back to her senses and smiled. This is a talent. You are not bad. You learned it in one go. Look, Spider-Man appears again. Mary Jane suddenly looked up and saw a figure hanging upside down passing over the heads of the three people. The movement was super embarrassing, but the speed was not slow. What is that? Charlotte's face was full of madness. Why is his spider silk emitted from a local area? This world is getting more and more crazy. Who are those men in black? Gwen sat up, her brows slightly furrowed as she watched the dark shadows flying over the residential buildings, following the strange Spider-Man. Those men in black did not look like Spider-Man. When passing by the alley where the three were, a group of dark shadows suddenly dispersed and poured into the alley. Their target has changed to us. Charlotte smiled. The copies of the Winter Soldier have not all died yet, and they almost forgot about Bucky. At 12 o'clock tonight, the Spider-Man Trio. Chapter 72, The Dragon and the Phoenix of Spider-Man. They're coming. What should we do? Mary Jane stepped back nervously. Gwen clenched her fists and took a fighting stance. She said calmly, you go first. I'll hold them back. Can you do it? My father and I learned fighting. As Gwen finished speaking, Charlotte's figure had already turned into a cannonball and rushed towards the man in black. What? In the shocked eyes of the two, Charlotte rushed towards the shadows with the help of a spider silk slingshot. The sharp wind whistled, and then the shadows rolled back and smashed into the wall in this impact. Bang bang bang. Boom. In an instant, loud noises came from the quiet alley, and the steel arms reflected cold light in the darkness, and the gravel was stirred wherever they passed, like a ruthless demolition machine. Boom, as a large amount of gravel flew from the alley to the street, the red and blue figures flew out, and landed on the billboard on the roadside. Hey, good kids are all asleep now, you should go home too. He waved and shouted to the passers-by, and then dozens of cyborgs swarmed out of the alley, smashing lampposts along the way, overturning cars and rushing towards Charlotte. Ah. Run. Spider-Man will save us. Wake up, that's not Spider-Man. The real Spider-Man is the metal suit. That's just a fake. Passers-by screamed and fled, and Mary Jane and Gwen quickly rushed to the scene. Under the siege of dozens of cyborgs, Charlotte's figure used spider silk to dodge left and right on the street. He flexibly shuttled through obstacles and seemed to be overwhelmed by the cyborgs in the next moment. Seeing this, Gwen suddenly thought of the trick Charlotte used before. Swish. Immediately, she shot spider silk with both hands to lock the two ends of the alley, forming a spider silk slingshot. Crackling, Gwen retreated quickly, and the spider silk stretched out. Boom. The next second, Gwen's figure burst out and hit a cyborg in the chest. Bang. A loud noise came from a car on the roadside, and the cyborg was deeply trapped in the iron sheet under the impact of Gwen. Beep beep beep, the car alarm sounded loudly, and the cyborg's attention was attracted by Gwen. He tore the car door and smashed towards Gwen without hesitation. Be careful, Mary Jane exclaimed, and threw her hand to shoot spider silk to lock the other party's metal arm. I saved you. Before she finished speaking, the cyborg's metal arm shook, and the terrible force immediately dragged Mary Jane towards him. Oh no, such a big force, I can't hold it. Mary Jane shouted. Charlotte turned over and landed on the roof of the car. Just let go of the spider silk. Oh, okay. As Mary Jane let go, the cyborg staggered for a moment, and then was hit on the head by Gwen, who flew over and fainted on the ground. Their weakness is the head. I understand. Mary Jane trotted to the alley and imitated Charlotte and Gwen's movements to make a spider silk slingshot. I'm coming. Whoosh, the wind whistled, and Mary Jane's figure flashed past Charlotte's eyes. Wow, so cool. Bang. The car on the roadside shook continuously, and Mary Jane broke the glass and fell into the car with her two legs exposed outside, struggling hard. Help. Mary Jane shouted. Charlotte. He jumped down, fired spider silk to lock the metal fist that was coming, and pulled out the metal arm by the root with his backhand. Rip. In an instant, blood splashed, and the cyborgs whose arms were removed groaned. They did not wail like ordinary people, but looked at each other, picked up the metal arms on the ground, and turned to flee the scene. Charlotte did not chase. He knew that these brainwashed cyborgs would not say anything. After the third resurrection match, the copy of the Winter Soldier could only be killed in front of him. If Bucky was at the scene, he might have been able to hold on for a few more seconds in his hands. But his current identity is a fake Spider-Man. Of course he can't show too strong, so he has been struggling until now. Looking at Gwen again, although she is agile and has a strong learning ability, it is a pity that her strength is less than 1 ton. The toughness of spider silk is limited, and there is no spider sense to assist, so it is already difficult for her to deal with 2 cyborgs. But compared to the funny girl Mary Jane, this is already very good. As the cyborgs retreated quickly, Gwen leaned against the corner and panted heavily. She looked up at Charlotte, who was relaxed, with a strange look in her eyes. You are much stronger than us, she said. Charlotte shrugged. Maybe the spider that bit me is stronger. Gwen did not continue to speak. Soon, Mary Jane finally got out of the car. Are you done? She glanced at the mess in front of her and couldn't help but said in a daze. Charlotte crossed her arms. You are the most useless Spider-Man I have ever seen. I just haven't adapted yet. Mary Jane snorted coldly. After she finished speaking, a figure suddenly flashed above her head. Pa. The orange Spider-Man flew down to the roof of the car. You guys are awesome. Can I join your team? You're the guy who uses his, but to shoot spider silk? Looking at the bloated Spider-Man in front of him, Charlotte felt the malice of the world towards him. "My name is Ned, and I just became Spider-Man." Ned had no shame, but twisted his, but to show off. "I'm the most special." Charlotte, Mary Jane, Gwen. The three looked at each other, not knowing what to say. "Why did they chase you?" Charlotte asked. Ned shook his head. "I don't know. I was practicing shooting spider silk, and then they showed up. They wanted to capture me. It's so scary." He shook his shoulders. Charlotte touched his chin and thought, why did Hydra capture these mutants? If necessary, they could capture humans privately and use mutant spiders to create a mutant army. There is no need to go through the trouble of releasing mutant spiders first and then capturing them one by one. It's really confusing behavior. "Can I join your 3-man team?" Ned asked again. Charlotte refused without hesitation. "Sorry, our 3-man team can only have 3 people, right?" He looked at Mary Jane and Gwen. The two nodded quickly. Yes, there can't be a 4th person in a 3-man team. In fact, we just met by chance and haven't decided to form a team yet. They didn't want to be friends with this shameful guy. "Oh, that's a pity," Ned said disappointedly. Soon, police cars drove around the corner and Gwen shot Spider Silk without hesitation and flew away. She couldn't let her father know about her changes. "They are coming. We have to leave quickly." Ned bent down, his abdomen heaving with his hands on the ground. Puff. A sound similar to farting was heard, and white Spider Silk suddenly shot out from a part and accurately locked onto the wall. "Charlotte, it's really a chrysanthemum monster." In the disgusted eyes of the two, Ned turned around and pulled the Spider Silk to fly away, obviously with good arm strength. Between the buildings, Ned had to change his shameful movements every time he shot Spider Silk, but he still enjoyed it. "Oh wow, I'm Spider-Man." Listening to Ned's cheers, Charlotte couldn't help but hold her forehead. The crouching dragon in the Spider-Man world has been born, only the phoenix is missing. Thank you Tang Shigwang for the 100 points. Thank you Tao for the 100 reading coins. Thank you Bookfriend 202211051547144451 for the 100 points. Thank you Nancy BZ for the 100 points. Happy. Chapter 73, Dark and Idle, Broken Fans. In the middle of the night, Charlotte went home, washed up, and lay down on the bed. You play as a friendly neighbor and save Daisy Spider-Man, and your chance of restarting +1. Looking at the prompt message in front of her, Charlotte was too tired to complain. Beep. The phone rang, and Charlotte connected the video call. "Hi, Charlotte, have you come into contact with those mutants? How is the situation?" Carter asked. Looking at Carter, who was also sitting at the head of the bed, Charlotte rubbed her eyebrows. "Not very good. Those mutants are generally not strong, but some of them have strange abilities." "Strange?" "Yes. Have you seen the Daisy monster?" "Carter, you can't imagine that place can also shoot Spider Silk." "Little Charlotte, spiders are like this." "Charlotte, what do you want to find me so late?" "Hydra has appeared again, and their target seems to be those mutants." "I know, I just fought with them." Charlotte thought for a while. "If possible, protect them first." "I understand." Carter said, "We have sent invitations to those mutants. Invite them to join us HIELD." Charlotte looked strange. "Are you so short of superpowers?" "No, I'm just worried that they will mess around." Carter said seriously, "Although their abilities are not strong, they are superpowers after all, and we can't let them act freely. One more thing." She looked at Charlotte. "You have Steve's spine in your hand, and I need that thing." "No problem, just ask someone to get it." Charlotte said very straightforwardly. "The black spine is completely useless in his hands, so it's better to give it to Carter for a search." He also wanted to know why Hydra implanted black spines in Tony. There must be more than 2 of these things, he had a hunch. Seeing Charlotte so generous, Carter felt embarrassed. "I won't take your things for nothing. I can mobilize some action funds. Send me your account number." Huh. Charlotte's eyes lit up. "We are so familiar with each other. How can I be embarrassed to do this?" Beep. In less than 2 seconds, Carter had received Charlotte's account number. She was not surprised. Anyway, she was used to it. "By the way, there may be Hydra undercovers in SHIELD. You have to be careful," Charlotte reminded. Although he didn't know whether the shield in this world would be the shield, it was right to be careful. Carter could provide her with a lot of useful information in shield, and he thought it was necessary to remind the other party. What? Hearing this, Carter frowned. Are you sure? Not sure, but if Steve can lurk in shield, so can others. Okay, I'll investigate secretly. Thank you for your reminder. Carter hung up the call. Not long after, there was a knock on the door, and Charlotte behind the door directly handed the black spine to the person outside the door. But the other party didn't mean to leave. Charlotte Parker. A serious female voice sounded, and Charlotte poked her head out from behind the door. Seeing the beautiful female agent with a ponytail in front of her staring at her, Charlotte subconsciously reached out and smoothed her bangs. I understand. Let's make it clear in advance that I'm a man who respects himself. Your colleague Natasha also wanted to get me. I didn't agree, but I can reluctantly accept you. After all, it's fun to help others. Of course, you can also give me some money to compensate me. Do you know Spider-Man? Agent Hill was too lazy to listen to nonsense and asked directly. Charlotte, am I overthinking? Well, I guess we know each other, he said ambiguously. Hearing this answer, Agent Hill handed a photo to Charlotte with a cold face. What do you mean? Charlotte was puzzled. Agent Hill suddenly bowed. I want Spider-Man's autograph, please. Charlotte, well, sure, I'll ask for you. He was a little unaccustomed to such a strange fan who was both enthusiastic and indifferent. Thank you. Agent Hill looked up, turned around and left expressionlessly. Seeing the other party walk into the elevator, Charlotte looked down at the photo in her hand. It's a bit blurry. Let me change it to a high definition one for you. He closed the door happily. Agent Hill in the elevator took a deep breath. She patted her chest. Carter's guess is right. He must not be Spider-Man. In her heart, the mysterious Spider-Man should be a handsome and charming man like Steve, and it is impossible for him to be a narcissistic little brat. Thinking of Steve, Agent Hill sighed again. The captain's true identity is Hydra, which is a big blow to everyone, especially the female colleagues around her. Fortunately, she is different. She likes men she can't get. Spider-Man just meets the requirements. Downstairs, Coulson, who was the least injured, has been discharged from the hospital. While waiting for Agent Hill, he would take out Steve's autographed photo from his arms. Hey, Agent Coulson, I'm Steve Rogers. Nice to meet you. I bet $10 that I only have 10 minutes to complete this operation. Coulson, the way you look at me is not right. I want you to stay away from me. Oh, so you are my fan. I can sign for you. Agent Coulson, is this my dormitory? Thank you for helping me prepare daily necessities. Agent Coulson. The scenes of getting along with Steve kept flashing in his mind, and the feeling of loss spread in the middle of the night. This was his idol, but not now. He ruthlessly tore up Steve's photo, took a deep breath, and looked at Agent Hill who was walking over. Steve taught me not to trust anyone easily, including my idol, he said. Agent Hill walked past Coulson with an expressionless face. She got into the cab and turned to look at Coulson. I'm different from you. At least he can prove that he's not Hydra. The next day, Charlotte went to the hospital after getting up. After chatting with Harry for a while, he rode his motorcycle to the school. Liar. At the school gate, Charlotte watched Jenny escape from the school in a panic under the pursuit of female classmates, and couldn't help but smile. Spider-Man one-day experience card is a benefit for you. As more and more mutants were exposed to the public, Jenny's lies were finally exposed. Oh, Spider-Man is here suddenly. A bloated figure flew past the school gate, and the students present exclaimed, "What a fat spider." Ha ha ha. His way of spinning silk is so unique amid the laughter of everyone. Chrysanthemum Spider-Man rushed into the campus in the blink of an eye. Obviously also a student here. Ned, Charlotte muttered the name, and then rode the motorcycle into the school gate. He was sure that there must be more than a few mutants in the school, because he saw a lot of Spider-Man. Hey, classmate, are you interested in joining the Spider-Man club? On the roadside, Spider-Man in red and blue pajamas stopped Charlotte and enthusiastically handed him a flyer. Charlotte's mouth twitched. Mutants have become so rampant. Looking down, he saw the name of the club on the flyer. Charlotte's Web, right square bracket. Chapter 74 Super Healing Spider-Man Competition. Oh, I know you. You are Charlotte Parker. Spider-Man took off his hood, and the freckled boy excitedly said to Charlotte, "Great, your name is also Charlotte. It's very suitable to join us. Would you consider it? Does the name of your club have any special meaning?" Charlotte asked. Of course, you should have read the fairy tale Charlotte's Web. Charlotte and it is a spider, and our club is also Spider-Man. Charlotte spread her hands. Unfortunately, I'm not Spider-Man. It doesn't matter, I'm not Spider-Man now. Maybe in 2 days. Well, it seems to make sense. Charlotte was speechless. The freckled boy moved closer and smiled obscenely. We have a Spider-Man competition tonight. Many girls will come to watch our competition, and the top 3 will get a kiss from the senior sister. He raised his eyebrows at Charlotte. Well, ahem. Charlotte covered her mouth and coughed, then said without looking away, "Actually, I'm a serious person, and have no interest in the sweet kiss of a senior sister, but as a fan of Spider-Man, I must participate in this kind of competition. Do I need to sign up?" "No, there is the address and time on it." The freckled man pointed to the flyer and smiled. "Okay, I will definitely be there." Holding the flyer, Charlotte parked the motorcycle on the side of the road, thinking that a group of mutants gathered together. Hydra should not miss this opportunity. "Hey, beautiful junior sister, do you want to join the Spider-Man club?" Behind him, the freckled man continued to promote Charlotte's Web. Spider-Man club? Gwen looked at the flyer in front of her and took it. "Is there a competition tonight?" She looked at the flyer and was a little moved. In addition to the chrysanthemum monster, she also wanted to meet other Spider-Men. "Okay, I will participate." Gwen put away the flyer and came to the laboratory building a while later, just in time to see a familiar face. "Charlotte Parker, is Charlotte's Web your club?" She stepped forward to greet Charlotte. Seeing the blonde girl greet her, Charlotte looked at her. "Do we know each other?" "I'm Gwen Stacy. Harry asked me out for you. We met yesterday. I was there when Jenny lied. I remember. You had long hair then. I cut it short." "Why? It's inconvenient." "Oh." Charlotte didn't expect it to be such a coincidence. He raised the flyer in his hand. "It's just a coincidence. Are you going to watch the game tonight?" "It sounds interesting, but I don't think I have time." "Okay, which floor are you going to?" "The 6th floor. I work in Dr. Otto's laboratory." "I'm going to the 5th floor, Professor Kurt's laboratory." "Do you work there too?" "No, Professor Kurt invited me to visit." "What to visit?" "I don't know. He said there's a surprise." The two chatted for a while, and Charlotte waved goodbye to Gwen and turned to Professor Kurt's laboratory. "Charlotte, you're here. Come and see what this is." Professor Kurt was in a good mood today. He pulled Charlotte to the glass box and pointed at the green spider in it. "Look, this is the mutant spider I just caught. I heard that many students have the superpowers of Spider-Man because they were bitten by this spider." Charlotte frowned. "Professor Kurt, what do you want?" "Yes, I want to use the genes of the mutant spider to improve my experiment." Kurt smiled. "Mutated spiders don't have regeneration factors. You're wasting time doing this," Charlotte said directly. Professor Kurt explained, "But I want to know the process of mutant spiders turning humans into Spider-Man." "Don't worry, I'm sure." Seeing that Professor Kurt had made up his mind, Charlotte's ominous premonition became stronger. It sounds reasonable, but can it really succeed? He didn't know, and there was no better way. This is Professor Kurt's professional field, and he didn't understand it at all. He didn't continue to persuade the other party, but chatted for a while, and left the laboratory. What should be done has been done. Respect the fate of others. But as for the fate of Spider-Man, Charlotte was not convinced, so he could only do it to the end. Oh, fuck him. At night, a bonfire was lit in an abandoned factory in the suburbs, and a group of Spider-Man frantically cheered for 2 mutants who were arm wrestling. "Come on, go. Knock him down. Try hard. Didn't you have dinner?" In the noisy environment, Charlotte flew over and landed at the window. There were about 100 people at the scene, including about 20 mutants. Those who were bitten by mutant spiders and became mutants working on wearing spider pajamas, which was easy to identify. Soon, more than a dozen mutants came one after another. Among them, he found a familiar figure. "Doesn't this guy have time?" Swoosh, the spider silk shot out, and Charlotte flew in front of the petite mutant. Hey, is that you? Gwen saw Charlotte was there, and was a little curious. Are you here to ask for kisses from the seniors too? No, those cyborgs seem to be targeting Spider-Man. I guess they may show up tonight, Charlotte said, turning to look at the intersection. Boom, various sports cars roared continuously, and the seniors dressed in indescribable clothes brought surprises to everyone. Hey, Bugs, let's have a party tonight. Oh. With the singing and dancing on the scene, the male students became more excited. I'm sure that the top 3 will have more than just kisses, Charlotte said, touching her chin. Gwen rolled her eyes. Do you really believe that this is a simple competition? Isn't it? Of course. Look over there. Gwen pointed to the corner of the factory and saw that some students took out flour from their pockets unscrupulously and started to have fun, and a group of mutants even shook it on the spider silk, looking for excitement in various ways. The scene was uncomfortable for a while. Charlotte looked at Gwen. Do you want to call the police? I didn't bring my phone. What a coincidence. Me too. Tram. The footsteps sounded lightly, and Mary Jane, who was already familiar with the spider silk skills, flew and landed beside the two. It's really strange to see Spider-Man do this for the first time. She shook her head. It's hard to comment. Charlotte didn't want to continue this topic. He said to Mary Jane, why are you here? I asked her to come. Gwen raised her phone. I exchanged phone numbers with her. Do you want to join us? Charlotte. Seeing that the number of people was almost there, the freckled man stood on the table and shouted. Tonight is the spider web swinging competition. The destination is a nearby amusement park. The first 3 people who reach the carousel can date the most beautiful Ms. Kaylin. It's only one night. Everyone should cherish this opportunity. As soon as these words came out, the mutants were already excited. Charlotte glanced at the sexy female Spider-Man in the crowd, and he was thoughtful. The rewards for the first 3 are the same. Mary Jane adjusted her eye mask. Not only the same, but also one. Wow, exciting. Charlotte clapped her hands. Gwen looked disappointed. It seems that I was wrong. These guys don't deserve to have the ability of Spider-Man at all. She turned to leave, but suddenly thought of what Charlotte had just said. You said they might be targeted? She turned and looked at Charlotte. Charlotte nodded. It's just possible, but not certain. Well, let's follow them, Gwen decided. Mary Jane was stunned. I haven't agreed yet. It doesn't matter, they've started. I'll go first, Charlotte said as he jumped out of the window and flew towards the amusement park with the huge mutants. On the way, he met the freckled man. Hey, man, if there are girls in the top 3, will Kaylin agree? Girls? The freckled man's smile gradually became obscene. She will be more excited. Charlotte. Exciting. Chapter 75. A new villain has appeared. How can we stand still? Oh no, you're too slow, shit. Keelan is mine. Go. In the abandoned factory, a group of mutants were shooting spider silk and flying between the low-rise factory buildings. In the chaos, mutants fell to the ground from time to time because of their unfamiliar skills. The reason for choosing this place to compete is that even if you make a mistake and fall while swinging on the spider silk, it is not fatal. Feo and Sadie, you're on the ground, eliminated. The freckled man who was a part-time referee shouted. Oh no, my Keelan. When I think of her being possessed by another man, my heart hurts. It hurts. It hurts too much. The wailing of several people became farther and farther away, and Charlotte kept his position in the top 3 without hurrying. Behind him, the orange yellow in the air was sticking out his butt and swinging the spider silk fiercely, showing his extraordinary talent for swinging spider silk. It was very technical, but it was extremely lacking in viewing. Charlotte raised his eyebrows. Is that you, Ned? Are you the Spider-Man from last night? Ned was surprised, but he kept moving. I want to surpass you. That may be difficult. Charlotte smiled, and in midair he pulled the spider silk hard. His figure turned into a phantom and flashed through the water tank on the roof, perfectly avoiding all obstacles, and leaped over the figure in front to become the first. Damn, this guy is fast again. Many mutants found something wrong with Charlotte, but Charlotte reminded them at this time, you push your head every time you enter a corner. Unless you can overcome this problem, you can't beat me. After saying that, he swung into the amusement park at a nearly perfect angle, completely leaving everyone behind. Oh no, he's here. Go for the second place. What? Someone surpassed us again. It's a girl. It's two girls with great figures. Wow, Karen is happy again. My Karen. Ned, who lost the top 3, knelt down and cried. Amidst the wailing, everyone arrived at the carousel one after another. Before the freckled man announced the winner, the scene was suddenly covered by a strong light from a searchlight high above. Is there anyone else in the amusement park? Impossible. Is it a surprise? Everyone's eyes were full of expectation, but Charlotte noticed something was wrong. He quietly retreated and pulled Gwen and Mary Jane to the corner. What's wrong? Mary Jane was confused. Charlotte waved his hand. Leave here first. Something is wrong. As soon as the voice fell, flames suddenly burst out in the darkness outside the strong light. Da-da-da. The moment the gunshots rang out, the chaotic scene was filled with screams, and blood flowers splattered on the ground. The mutants who couldn't avoid it fell to the ground and wailed. Ah! My leg. Run. Help. Oh no. My bud. Ned jumped up and down while holding the bleeding place, temporarily losing the ability to swing on the spider silk. The next moment, the gunshots stopped abruptly. Dozens of men in suits holding guns emerged from the darkness and quickly controlled the injured mutants at the scene. Obviously, they didn't want the lives of these mutants. In the crowd, the sexy Kaylin walked out slowly, and everyone was immediately incredulous. Kaylin, why is it you? Kaylin, what's going on? The freckled man was horrified. Kaylin looked down at the group of embarrassed mutants, her eyes full of contempt. She didn't answer, but laughed to herself. Haha, what a bunch of trash. I'm disappointed that Spider-Man can't even dodge bullets. What do you want to do? Ned asked weakly. Because of excessive blood loss. You gathered us together just to kill us, right? You're such a bastard. The injured mutants spoke one after another. Kaylin was not interested in listening to what they said. She just hooked her finger slightly, and the man in the suit behind her immediately took action and quickly threw the mutants into the prepared truck. By the way, where are the other 3? Kaylin counted the number of people and realized something was wrong. They should have run away. The man in the suit bowed. Run away. Kaylin lit a cigarette for herself and slowly exhaled a puff of mist. They can't run away. In the woods outside the amusement park, 3 figures shuffled quickly. They are members of the Empire. They actually ambushed the amusement park in advance. On the treetops, Gwen breathed a sigh of relief, and her face under the mask was already pale. Charlotte frowned. What is the Empire? The Empire is the most terrible underground force in New York. Their master is Kingpin, a supercriminal with blood on his hands. Gwen explained. His father, George Stacy, often dealt with Kingpin's men, so she also knew Kingpin, the king of the underground world. Hearing this, Mary Jane was shocked. Why would they target us, and that Kaylin? She planned this action. Is she Kingpin's? Gwen sighed. That should be the case. Next, we have to hide ourselves carefully. They can find us at any time. Charlotte was thoughtful. It was normal for Hydra to target these mutants, but why did Kingpin also target these guys? Kachika. Just as he was thinking, there was a strange sound in the woods in front of him, and trees fell one by one. A huge black figure suddenly rushed out of the treetops where the 3 were. Found you guys. Boom. Amidst the arrogant laughter, the tree trunk was broken by the violent force, and 3 figures flew to the ground in a dangerous manner. Who is it? What a big guy. It's a rhino. No, it's a mecha. Charlotte stared at the metallic luster in the darkness, and his eyes fell on the most conspicuous part of the mecha. It was a hideous weapon similar to a rhino horn. A new villain has appeared. Rhino Man. Boom boom boom. The ground trembled slightly, and the sound of mechanical friction sounded. The nearly 3-meter high black rhino mecha raised its feet to crush the tree trunk. In an instant, the oppressive feeling brought by the giant swept the scene, and Gwen and Mary Jane felt that they were about to suffocate. You are very different from those trash. Tonight is finally interesting. A loud laugh came from the mecha. Looking at the huge iron lump in front of her, Gwen's heart rose to her throat. Run separately, she whispered. Mary Jane's legs were weak. I seem to have numb legs. She was about to cry. Hearing this, Charlotte clapped her hands and laughed. Great, your legs are numb, so he can only catch you first. Mary Jane. You bastard. When she turned around, Charlotte's figure had already gone into the woods. Gwen. This scene also made the guys hiding in the mechas a little unresponsive. He ran away. Okay, then I can only catch you two first. The rhino answered on his own, and then controlled the iron fists to collide with each other. Sparks flew, and the black beast ran wildly. Ha ha ha, poor Spider-Man, you are miserable. Amidst the crazy laughter, the iron fists, that were bigger than sandbags, came with a strong wind. Gwen was shocked by this horrifying momentum, which was not a force she could resist at all. It was too late. Get out of the way. Mary Jane screamed loudly. She subconsciously closed her eyes, unable to bear to look at this cruel scene. Boom. The next moment, accompanied by a loud bang, the ground trembled slightly, and the fierce fist wind swept the fallen leaves. Her fallen leaves brushed across her cheeks, her long red hair fluttered in the wind, and Mary Jane did not wait for the violent crushing she imagined. She slowly opened one eye, and after seeing the scene, the fear on her face suddenly turned into infinite surprise. Spider-Man. 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 In an instant, 3 exclamations rang out almost at the same time. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.